All righty. Good evening, y'all. Space Miner checking in. Tonight's program, the Rabbit Pit. We're just going to go down the rabbit hole until we find the rabbit pit. And tonight, we're going to be having Long Live Coins, the B at Long Live Coins, LLC. He'll be joining us shortly. As soon as he makes his appearance, I'll pop him up. So we're just going to socialize. We're just going to hang out. We're just going to talk. We're going to see where this all goes. There's been a lot going on lately, and I thought, yeah, let's talk about stuff. Let's talk about the stuff that maybe we haven't really been discussing so much lately, and just kind of go from there. I'll wait to hear from the B, and so I'll just say hi real quick to everybody. Neil, thank you for joining. You were early in on that, and you are right. By silver, platinum, crystallized osmium. Chew, long time. Good to see ya. C4, how's it going? Frostbite, thank you for joining. B, you in?
I'm here.
All righty. Badow. Welcome in, buddy. How you doing?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate you. So, in case you missed it, we're going for the rabbit pit tonight. Most people stop at the rabbit hole, and I'm going all the way into the pit, and thought you'd be a good person to join me. And,
awesome. Let's do it.
Welcome in, bud. Good to see you. So we have not done a program on Space Miner here in a minute, and I'm very thankful that you would join me. Things have been moving quickly out in the world. No doubt about that. Metal's going ballistic, wars and rumors of wars. We've got weird social dynamics popping up that we never would have thought in our childhood that we would ever see as like a real thing. We've got, controversies going on in YouTubes, and I don't know, man, there's just a lot going on. And I really wanted to talk about some of it. I suppose, why don't we start with like a little bit of financial news? Silver and gold, goodness gracious. What are we up to currently today?
So, yeah, silver just kind of pulled back finally a little bit today, but it's funny. I mean, it's pulled back to 46. So, yeah, I mean, if 46 is the pullback, yeah, we're not doing too bad.
No, and we graced over 47, which was huge. I've heard some guys out there talking long cycle, saying, it looks like we're in a 20, 30-year cup and handle, is what I've heard some out there saying, that we are in fact beyond the cup, beyond the handle, and we have crossed over into a no resistance zone, and which is wild. It's for our generation, this is new.
Yeah, I mean, basically that cup and handle pattern was from my birth. Like, so, when I was born is kind of where this the last high was. And yeah, from what I hear, I'm hearing the same thing as you. I'm hearing our last resistant point is basically 48 to 50, and there shouldn't be but very little resistance there. And then it's like you say, a whole new realm.
And if you guys are kind of wondering what that means to me, it means, when we're talking about resistance, and going through, sorry, I'm fidgeting. My chair spins and it rocks, and so I feel like I'm like, all right. And what it means though is like, look, there's nobody above us holding bags right now. Nobody above us is holding bags. We're all fresh on the buy-in right now. Everybody
Yes.
is fresh in on the buy-in. So there's nobody up at the top waiting just to sell out hordes of silver right now, and in fact, it seems that we are entering the beginning stages of supply crisis. Um, I would call them the beginning stages. I don't think we're anywhere near like a full-on supply crisis. But when you're talking about there is nobody above you anymore. If you bought today, there's nobody above you anymore. We're entering possibly a critical demand era, and I think you might agree with me on that one. The United States specifically, I won't speak to the whole world, but here in the States, I might call this the beginning of a critical demand era, where some mining resources have hit peak mining, possibly. We are extremely volatile in the global trade market, as they like to call it, the world trade market. Um, we're losing friends every day. We're losing trade partners every day. We're being shut down from orders every day. Countries, there's a lot of countries writing us letters right now. Hey, our country has suspended post between countries. Like, you can't even get mail in and out. Mail, much less the metals. Um, and so I know that I have two different countries that have already sent me letters saying we can't ship to you anymore. And so here we are with premiums. I think is kind of, I think, the next step in the pricing motion that we might need to be considering taking a look at. We might be entering in a raised premium market soon.
Yep.
And as high as it's going, people are buying. They're still buying. I'm still buying. I'm selling and I'm buying, but yeah, I'm buying too. Still, I'm not going to let none of this stop me.
Right.
So, what do you think, man? Any one of those holes you want to jump into and see how deep it goes?
Yeah. Well, I think a good point to hit on is, you know, we are going into, was it I can't think of his name right now, but wrote the book Currency Wars, and like we were talking, I think on my channel, that that basically can translate into um, commodity wars as well, because that's basically what this currency war is. We've been able to, and since I was a kid, and this goes back to, like I said, when I was a kid, and we've been able to, since I was a kid, I've watched our production flee from the US and go over a lot of it to China, right, and other places, and we've been able to just export our fiat dollars and get commodities at a cheap price. And that's been good up until this point, but I fear that we've dug ourselves into a hole in that regards, in that when people stop wanting our devaluing dollar, are we going to have trouble sourcing goods? And since we've exported all our manufacturing overseas, for the convenience of getting cheap goods and setting up this system where we're the global reserve, have we now put ourselves in a position as the US where we're really, kind of going to be in a hurting position? Because, if people don't want our fiat dollars, how are we going to get the goods that we need? And if we don't have the production capacity because we've been relying on other countries to buy our goods and services, are we going to be able to fill in the gap needed? If we don't have the infrastructure to take on some of these, just regular building, like chairs and desks and computers and all that stuff is done, in other countries now, and so yeah, and and on top of that, we have not only do we have that as a problem, we have all these tariffs suddenly coming into play. And so, man, oh man, it's a little bit nerve wracking to me when I look at those issues. Uh, it's a little bit nerve wracking, and I don't know that puts us in a good situation, you know. So yeah, I think that's a problem. Um,
I
so
think you really hit it with I think there was one part of that I really would like to respond to is the infrastructure. Um, you know, we have been lending a lot of our industrial might onto other countries through their industrial power, right? So we've been dependent on them to produce, refine, and distribute a lot of our goods, for that matter. And like so, when you go looking at like rare earths as an example, we are no major player in the rare earth market as an example. Okay, we have a few rare earths available. We got a few available that maybe we could take advantage of, but between political structures, political and legal structures, that could be quite difficult. Um, Environmental concerns. Here in America, we actually do care about our land, and we don't just completely wipe out species for the sake of a little bit of iron, you know. Um, so, and quite frankly, we just don't have the facilities and technology on a pad here in America to process a good portion of those. And it's not just rare earths we're limited to. And so when we talk about infrastructure for a long time, infrastructure was partially considered a multi international affair. That was part of your infrastructure. And we can't count on a lot of.
uh,
You there?
yeah, I lost you there for a bit, but yeah, I lost you at we don't have the infrastructure, and then you cut out. But
Yeah, we don't have the infrastructure to literally do this ourselves. And that infrastructure used to be considered in partially an international affair, and we can't rely on that anymore. And now we have to say, can we do this ourselves? Do we actually have the material that we want to source here?
right,
And at the end of the day, there's a good deal of these that the option is no. And we
right,
don't have the infrastructures to support like a big rare earth boom, which means
yeah,
we're
like
out of huge technology sectors.
yeah, we have a lot of, like you say, rare earths, as everyone knows, are not that they're really rare. It's just it's processing them, it's getting them processed to a point where they can be used. That's kind of the issue. But like you say, we don't have the infrastructure to gain these critical elements. And since this is kind of a rabbit trail podcast or what have you, um I kind of have been under the when I when I started looking at the monetary system, it kind of leads you down a trail where you look at everything involved in the monetary system, and how we're using it, and that we are exporting our currency to get in the goods, and you look at these things and you think, well, okay, if we're doing it this way, surely there's someone in the upper government that's overlooking these things, and that they would have a backup plan, per se, for any of these issues. And when I'm looking into these things, it leads me to the conclusion that we're there. I personally, from looking at it, think that we're being thrown under the bus in a sense as Americans. And when I look out at the rest of the world, And like in the UK right now, they just tried to push out the digital ID. And when I look at these things, I see, to me, that they have kicked the legs out from under the table of America's strengths. And as I remember being a kid and thinking, I don't know much about the economy and I didn't really pay attention, but I knew as a kid, like, if you get rid of all of our infrastructure and industry, that makes us reliant on these other countries. And so surely I can't be the only one understanding these things. And when I look at us now and I think, well, where's our backup plan? Why now? Trump has talked about, since coming into office, oh, we've got to bring manufacturing back, and I agree with that. But to just be addressing that today is, to me, a huge issue.
Yeah, that puts us on. Even if we put a shovel on the ground today, we're still decades behind.
We're decades behind, and when I see them rolling out the digital ID over there, it makes me wonder, is this purposeful? Because in like the WEFs of the world, they talk about wanting us to own nothing and be happy. And in the UK, where they're rolling out this digital ID, they already kind of they took, not very many people have protection in the form of, guns and bullets and self-protection. And you have these immigrants over there that are, you know, uh, you know, taking girls and doing bad things at their own whims, and there's theft. You see all of this chaos and destruction, and then when you tie that into the way the WEF looks at America, and I'm just kind of wondering, tying this together, are they weakening us? Because if you look at what they want to do by kind of controlling the world with a digital currency, the one stronghold that they would really need to take out is America. Like, we're the one with the Constitution that have the belief that we have the right to free speech. We have the Second Amendment that protects the First Amendment. We have the right to travel without, search and seizure. And, we have all these established well, some of us who pay attention, I should say, have this ingrained in us. You know, I feel like the school has, in these last since I was in school, and a little bit previous to that, we still understood some of those things. When I went through school, they weren't teaching us, the Constitution. They weren't teaching us about why we should own guns and why these things are so important. They kind of let that go by the wayside. And I think these last generations, the schooling has led us down a bad path. Instead of strengthening our what made America great in the beginning, they have shied away from teaching that in the schools. And so I just kind of step back and look at that big picture, and I feel like they're weakening us on purpose. And they need us, like, we're the stronghold that would need to break to be able to roll this out to the rest of the world. If we break, if we submit to this digital ID and currency and give our guns away and this, that, and the other, I feel like they wouldn't have much trouble rolling it out elsewhere.
You
So
know,
I kind of wonder if some of this wasn't planned out a little bit more than we would like to believe.
I think you're onto something really strong here. When you consider it under that kind of a context, all right, you say, okay, well, if there really is like a world agenda, okay, and you want to move these things and you want to influence entire nations, you would naturally go after the weaker nations that have little power to defend themselves against such kind of legislation. And then you authorize and authoritate said legislation, right? And now you've got a whole country that's captured on this digital ID. Now, what if they say, look, we're okay with visitors as long as they have a digital ID or some kind of similitude, of it, right? And so they say, so England reaches out to US and says, hey, um, why don't we just reaches out to us and says, well, hey, why don't we just make a deal between us that you guys got to like up your game? Like you got the real ID. Well, we've taken it up to this digital. Thank you, wife. And we've taken it up to this digital. Um, why don't you bump it up a notch, get some digital going? Then we have reciprocating ID systems.
Right.
You see? But here's the stranglehold is they say, look, we can't legally deal with anybody that doesn't meet said stringent criteria. So you're going to have a system that it meets at least this much,
Right.
That's at least comparable to ours. And so the other nations, if they want to do business, they're going to have to meet these guys'. No, they don't have to. Nobody's forcing them to meet this criteria. But if you want to do business with this guy and he's putting his foot down and saying, no, you meet this criteria or I don't do business with you, well, then you either meet his criteria or you don't do business with him.
Yeah.
But you get enough nations in cooperation and in league under the same checklist, well, by golly, you're kind of starting to push some weight around now.
Yeah.
And so there still could be, because we are the last standhold for like true liberty, and they're already strangling the Second Amendment's dead. I mean, our constitutional amendments are, for all intent and purpose, dead.
Yeah.
We're just kind of walking around like what was that? What was that movie where the Weekend at Bernie's?
Yeah.
Weekend at Bernie's. That's our rights right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm pointing out. And the other thing that they've attacked pretty underhandedly, and I've been watching since I was a kid because I grew up on a ranch, is they've been undercutting the farmer since I've been alive. And the food issue, we have what we need here. Like we have oil, we have the minerals that we would need, we have the metals it's just like you say, we don't have the infrastructure in place to do that. And then you look at the farming. Our nation was started off as everybody was a farmer. And there wasn't an issue there, but they have been undercutting the farmer. I've watched all of our neighbors around us have sold. Someone has either bought everybody up and got real big, or everybody is sold out. And there's just a few farmers here and there left hanging by a string, or a really big farm that's managed to do really well and swallow everybody up and take their land. And so, that to me is a big point that would have needed to have been done. They would need us to needed to get us where we're at now if they're going to weaken us and put us in a situation where, we don't have the means to withstand it. So I do. That's another thing that I kind of look at that makes me think this is kind of, we don't. And my point to that is like, so what? Well, my point is we don't have advocates for us looking down on us. Trump's not going to save us. Biden's not going to save us. Whoever the next president coming in isn't going to save us. And I think that we've been looking to these leaders and hoping, like, okay, well, we got Biden out now, maybe Trump will come in and sit. Like there's a lot of hope laid on our leaders that they're going to possibly save us. But if you look at their track record, they're the one that's undermining us this whole time, all the way through. And so I guess my point to that is we need to grassroots this thing. If there's going to be any hope for us, we need to do it from the grassroots up, not be waiting and thinking, oh, we'll vote someone in who's going to help us. Not going to happen. We're too far corrupt, we're too far gone in that matter. We need to do it from the ground level up. And not that that's easily done, but if there was a way to get us back on track, I think that's the way to do it. Is, firstly, I'm working hard on changing myself to be a better person in my community, to my family, to myself, to my community. And I think that's where we have to start. Instead of looking outside of ourselves and putting the blame on Trump or whoever, we need to take responsibility ourselves and work it up from the ground level. And
Of the people, by the people, for the people.
yeah, and you got, people in our community that, we all might respect, the Mike Maloney's, the Lynette Zangs. She's constantly pushing. She's got a narrative of like 5 things that she's always pointing out as community and food and shelter, and community is always a big one on the list. And I think that when it, when this is coming down to where we're at, I think that's a big thing, and we need to. It's funny. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but on this line of thinking, I have been setting up a way to purchase directly from the farm with gold and silver. And I can buy beef directly from the farm that hasn't, that's pasture grazed and hasn't had a bunch of vaccines. And so I'm trying to set up avenues that, we can actually put into practice what we're preaching, where we can go directly to the farm, use gold and silver, buy the goods and services that we need, and get that community, you know, in in use, in sync.
Speaking of community, let me take a second and just say hi to a couple people. We still got C4, Neil, JM up in here. We got OC stepped in, Ground Pounder, welcome in. We also had Doc in here a little bit earlier, another member of the Burger Crew. Whoop, whoop. What up, guys? Um, yeah, if y'all don't know, get on over there. We got a couple of channels in here that do produce content. Neil's over there constantly filtering out and disseminating new relevant information. And I know that for sure, Ground Pounder, he's doing his tree work, and he does a lot of morning hangout where we sit back and have some burger time. If you know what that means, stop on by. But man, I appreciate you guys being in here and visiting old Space Miner and B for a minute while we jump into the rabbit pit. I have a feeling we already found our hole, so we're about. I think we're getting somewhere here. But yeah, man, you guys, if you got anything, got any questions or comments along the way, throw them in. I'm going to try to respond to them where I can, and where they're relevant. So,
So Ground Pounder says, "Get rich or die trying." Funnily enough, as we're going into this in game, is a lot of people would refer to it as. I think we are in a time where you know
oh, Frostbite's lurking too. Thank you, Frostbite. I see you, buddy. Sorry. No,
what do
no,
you,
go ahead, please.
what do you call it when you turn lead into gold? What do you call that process?
Alchemy.
Alchemy. We're in a place where we have a way to alchemize our fiat paper dollar into real money. And for those that have an understanding of what's going on, that's a quick way to get rich that hasn't presented itself in a long time, but it comes with the knowledge of understanding what's going on. So, and it's not, it's not something that we want. It's not something that I want, but it is something that, we have that option in front of us. And I think, it would be ridiculous not to take advantage of that.
I think you're dead on. And on this note, you and I were chatting earlier, and we were discussing, you know, principally speaking, what is value, and what is valuable, and what do we consider a value, and so yeah, the when we're talking about cash, USD, fiat, you know, um, it is lead. It's worth less than lead.
Right.
It's worth less than lead. And you're right. We are at a unique time where this lead still carries some weight. It still carries some weight. And if you're not acting on it, if you're not, like they say, keeping your money moving, as they say, then you're going to lose out. We know that that fiat, anywhere you go, is on rapid decline. Anywhere you go, and it's because stuff just costs too much. People just kind of want the stuff now, you know, and I understand that fiat is handy for liquidity's sake. It is an easy way to communicate value. It is a good way. And Ian does make that point that it's one quality away from money. Cash is one quality away from money. It's
Right.
but it does not store value.
Correct. And
It
not
does.
only not stored, it's at this point it's losing it
It's
rapidly.
losing, right? But so whenever we're looking at values, it really kind of starts like, what is value first? It's your time. It's your life force. It's the time that you could be spending with your kids, with your wife, with your friends, gardening, whatever. So that's the first value, is your time. And in trading your time, you need things. You trade your time to be able to eat and shelter yourself.
Right.
You need to eat, drink, and shelter yourself. But once you've sheltered yourself, you've ate and drank your fill, and you've got enough food and drink to keep on eating and drinking, there comes a point that your food and drink rots. Okay.
Yep.
And you're going to need to figure out where you're going to put your time and energy, where you're going to store the time and energy that you already burned and you're not getting it back. And so we were kind of discussing, and we've had this discussion a few times, what I like to refer to personally as the pillars of value, pillars of wealth, pillars of value. And among those is, dirt, land. That's your home. That's your shelter. Dirt, land. Water. Drill you a water well if you can. Get irrigation wherever you can. Find the cheapest water source you can. Right.
Yep.
Food. We all know the struggle. Got to preserve some food. Got to store some food. And we got to back keep some food. But now, what do we do with all this extra money and material? We need some kind of material, because if we go with the paper, that might be fine to kind of like run around and quickly get rid of. Everybody agrees they'll take the paper for some reason, not the metal. Never really, that kind of bugged me, but no, we need to be turning paper into something, because right now, man, I keep looking back here. This is me, man. I keep looking back in hindsight and in retrospect, right? Saying, I wished I would have gone all in that moment. I wish I would have put more into it. I wish I would have just bought more metal and then gone down to the store and sold it later, even if I was taking a hit, you know?
Yeah.
And it wasn't always like that. There was a time where, you don't know if you're going to take a hit for the next few months, maybe year or two on your metal.
Hmm.
And now it's like, no, dude, it's always winning, at least
Yeah.
annually.
Yeah, I wanna kind of drill into that a little bit. And Unleashed here made a comment, says the U.S. dollar has actually maintained its value better than most of the world's currencies over the last many decades. The USD has been losing purchasing power, but losing it slower than most others. Okay, and I want to just drill into this. Firstly, in that statement alone, and what you just said, looking back, you get what is considered normalcy bias, right? Where we think that past is going to be the same as it is in the future, and that is probably the biggest killer in a hyperinflation environment. Is the people that don't understand that we're going into, or why the paper currency loses its money. There you look back and you think, oh well, we're gonna remain at, I'll look back at the past and it's always been good to hold on to the dollar, so I'll just put them under my mattress, and I'll save them up, they'll be good. Well, at the beginning of a currency's life cycle, that's good because you have a lot of the life cycle left, and it's going to be a much slower decline in loss of purchasing power. So this is the average person's mindset, is that you get stuck in your own understanding of the dollar being that steady value. And that's the catch, that's the trap. And another point you made was, why do they accept the fiat paper and not the metal? Well, again, this is a mindset. This is a mental, false understanding of reality and what's taking place. It's because they don't teach us this stuff in school. Like, this should be something that we were taught, especially since we're approaching the end of our life cycle of the money system. Like, most fiat currency life cycles are 50 to 80 years. Okay, and so as we approach the end of our fiat currency life cycle, that should be the main thing that's taught to our kids in school is, look, we're coming up on the end of our life cycle of money. We got to really focus in on that, and you got to move it fast. And but
Hey, we had a good run too. Let's face it, we had a really good run. Good,
for
strong
sure,
run, man.
for
The
sure.
whole world ran on us.
Right. And we were able to get those goods out of just not doing anything but printing paper out of thin air. And we got all these goods at a cheap value. And see, this is the basic mindset of your average person in the population. So a lot of people don't see it as I see it. And therefore, if you're thinking, if you don't realize that you're coming up to the end of your fiat life cycle, and what happens at the end of a fiat life cycle? It exponentially rises or drops fast. I'm thinking of gold rising fast, but the dollar will exponentially drop faster and faster as it goes out. So at the end of a currency's life cycle, the process of by which it loses its value gets faster and faster and faster. And so, these are things that the average person doesn't look at and doesn't understand. And if as they start to understand it, that's when they will suddenly start to want accepting the silver or the gold. Anyone who understands it now is happy to accept the silver or gold, right? Once you understand this concept, you would much rather be paid in silver or gold. But for those who don't understand what's happening, then they don't even know that silver and gold is real money, right? And that's kind of part of this trickery that I believe has been taking place. And a reason that we shouldn't put our trust in those that are up above us. They're not telling us these things, If your banker was telling you for the last 10 years, you got to start preparing because our fiat currency is going to start to lose value quickly, well, then I might say, we got to give them more credit than we are. At least they're, preparing us for what's coming.
Well, and I'm going to step out on a limb here,
Sure.
and I'm going to say, look, even those that haven't stepped into like tangible wealth yet, okay? Because there's a lot of very wealthy and successful people that have done very good for themselves outside of tangible wealth. But even they're seeing this coming, and they're diverting assets out of out of out of some of these more what's the word I'm looking, speculative. They're kind of getting out of a lot of speculative investment and starting to approach the hard asset industry. So what we're seeing in a lot of this paper trading is people are returning. There's very few speculative markets being really explored right now if they don't directly involve like an energy or like hard material at the end of them. Like even if you're investing into like Cat and John Deere and stuff right now, guys are making these moves because they're not so comfortable with banking institutions. They're not so comfortable with lending institutions. They're not so comfortable with this debt system anymore. And people want to know that when the dollar starts crashing, who's still going to own something? Who's
Right.
going to own more? Who's going to own more than a bag of zeros and ones? Is where these people are kind of looking into their paper assets right now, saying, "Man, I got to at least get into at least John Deere or Ford or somebody that produces something. At least they still have like assets at their disposal. They're investing in land, they're investing in machinery, they're investing in energy. Because
Yeah.
and they're not investing into you know asset recovery. Banking, debt asset recovery. That was a big business there for a minute when
Oh,
when credit was popular. That was a huge business.
for sure. For sure, yeah, and that's where you wanted to be. And I mean, I agree with you there. For a while it's where you want to be. It's just that we're coming into that cycle. I want to address Neil Hahn said to me there, they told us, but they didn't tell us, Neil. They told the banks. They told the banks, and in fact, there's a good video of the bankers sitting around and talking about how they shouldn't tell the public, that the public doesn't need to know. And even though that they have more trust in the FDIC, which is the insurer of the bankers, don't tell the citizens because then they'll get nervous and they'll want
Well,
out.
I was just about to say, B, in some conditions, they would consider it some kind of national security issue at a certain point. Like,
Right. But see, that's where I'm talking about the breakaway. The problem is like when industry and insiders and the people who are supposed to be representatives for the people start not wanting the people to know the reality of what's going to hurt them, well, then that's when there's a big a gapping problem there.
oh, I was just texting you for that.
So that's a problem when those that are supposed to be there to insure you and look out for you and let you know where the problems are, when they just kind of laugh and snicker and chuckle around the table of how bad the things that are coming for the average population is, but don't tell them because it'll scare them worse. It's like, well, yeah, it might create a problem, but you should still tell the people. Like, it's you can't not tell because of the position that it puts us in. Like when this all does go down, because they are going to keep printing the money out of thin air, and it is going to continue to devalue, and these other countries are getting out of the US dollar because of the way how we're treating other countries with it. And so you're putting your own citizenry, your own people in a position where they have no lever, they have no help, they have no way of supporting themselves because they're trusting in the establishment to, take care of their money, to uphold them. The FDIC will come in and insure anything that the bank can't cover, and the bank's sitting there laughing with the FDIC at their table saying, we know that we're not going to be able to cover these people and they're going to be completely screwed, but don't tell them, ha ha ha. Look, that's not okay. Like that's when when I realized, or helped me to, concreted my understanding that, look, there's not help coming from top down. We need to, from the grassroots up, start spreading the word if there's going to be any help for us, because it's not coming from the top down. We can't trust our leaders. I can't trust the bank. I can't trust the FDIC. They admit as much. So to me, they're not telling us, and that's an issue. And so that's part of the reason why I come on to these type of podcasts, is to tell people, look, this is only going to get worse with time, and this right here is a way to at least give you a little bit of relief from those pressures. When I first got these 4 1-ounce silver pieces, I was holding them in my hand and I was counting up the value, and it was about $60 here in my hands. And it was about $15 a piece here. Actually, some of these are more pricey, but let's just take a 1-ounce round as its base case and take the premiums off. I had $60 in my hand, and now I have about $200 in my hand, and that's just a few years down the road. And that's a big move, and it's not from silver going up a lot. Again, it's the fiat that's going down, that quick rate that is putting the people in jeopardy. And you can quickly go on to YouTube or whatever and just Google grocery shopping or videos on family groceries, and get just a bunch of videos of people coming on to YouTube in tears saying, I've cut all the corners I can on grocery shopping and I'm still not able to make it. I don't, buy videos anymore. I cut all the fun stuff out of my life and I'm still not able to afford groceries. And it breaks my heart because, if I didn't know about what was happening and had a way to protect myself, I'd be in those exact same shoes. And, that's heartbreaking to me. So I think that people should be forewarned. You look at any basic currency book that looks back over history and looks at the currencies. Like I said, they'll all tell you any fiat currency life cycle lasts from 50 to 100 years. 50 to 80 years is the average. And we're at the end of our life. So, I mean, that alone should be taught in schools, and people should be aware of that. And, if the dollar did remain stronger than most, that's fine, but you can still be aware of it and keep your eye on it and know that, okay, well, this is, at some point probably going to be an issue. And it puts the control back into the people's hands. But when people don't even understand it and they just think, oh, the dollar's, like we're told, the dollar is strong, you don't ever have to worry about the dollar. When Nixon closed the gold window, that's what he said. He said, oh, your dollar will buy as much tomorrow as it bought today. You don't have to worry about, well, these are these are not truthful sayings. And, I feel like, we need to try to let the people know as much as we can anyway.
It's a lot to work with. Here's another thing too. I don't think people spend their money like they should. I'm a guy that This is not
Spend those
financial
fiat.
advice. This is not financial advice. This is what I've done. I'm one of those guys that I believe in spend your money while it's worth something. Buy
Your
something
fiat,
worth
yes.
your money. Buy something that's going to last you, I mean, at least a year, or has the capability of lasting a year or more. Um, and buy everything you need right away while your money is worth something. And this kind of like leans into the the no debt living, to living debt free or a debt free lifestyle at least. Because look, we can't all escape debt instantly, right? The debt's a long and difficult road, and I think it's important. Anybody that's tackling that, you know, you have my prayers, because it's very difficult road. But that being said, you can still live a debt free lifestyle, and one of the ways I conduct myself is by buying things like cash out. Like it might take me a while to come up with the money, but when I get like a large chunk of money in, I make a large purchase and I'm broke, like instantly broke. I make I get the most value out of it. I try to spend the
Right.
extra. Grandpa used to tell me, he would say, $10 a month will take you first class, was his saying. $10 a month to take you first class is how he'd put it. But I get it. You buy a good tool and it's the last tool. You buy a good truck and it's the last truck. You buy a good piece of land and it's the last piece of land, et cetera, go on and on. Well, by the time you've bought everything that you need, and like I tell my boy, you buy what you need, then you buy what you want, you know?
Yeah.
By the time you've bought everything you need, you're done buying. A reasonable feller should be done buying stuff. He should be like, you're going to have consumables, no doubt. But like, really, like, I buy a pair of boots and I'm wearing them into the dirt until my toes are poking out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
How I am, man. My truck's out there smoking, but everything around that's been replaced or rebuilt, you know? And but because of that, every extra dollar that I'm going in, I have no more big purchases to make at this moment. I have no bills back due. I have no rent due. And so with that, I don't although I don't make a lot of money, when I do get money in, I get to spend it better. Because you know what? Your fiat is worthless tomorrow. But if I spend my fiat today on silver, like we were just talking, it's gonna be a lot more tomorrow, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Getting that's, you're just speaking on inflation, really, is what you're doing.
Dude,
You're,
your truck was cheaper yesterday. Your rent was cheaper yesterday. I mean, your land was cheaper yesterday. Your truck was cheaper yesterday. Your pants were cheaper yesterday. Your silver was cheaper yesterday.
and that's what starts to take place is your mindset will start to take hold in mainstream, and that is what will set off making the inflation that much worse. But it is what you need to do. You do need to capture the value that because you worked it, you went out and you fought fires, and you put your life in danger and sweated hard and protected others, and you got a payment of value for that. And what you're saying is you need to capture all of the value that you can out of that. And that's the exact proper way to do it. And if you were at the beginning of your cash life cycle, you wouldn't have to really worry about that. But when you get further towards the end, you need to transfer it right away as soon as you get it. And there was people in Weimar that would get paid twice a day so that they could capture their value, because the wife would
That
have to
makes sense.
run out and buy groceries with the middays purchase, because
It was really falling that fast.
it was falling that fast.
It
And
really was.
and Alistair McLeod came out and had a video just maybe last week or so, and he said, everyone knows and talks about in the financial realm about inflation, and they say, it's the money printing out of thin air that devalues your currency. And that's true. But he said there is a whole nother side to that. That is the trust in the mindset of the people and the trust in the currency. And once the people's mindset comes into reality that, wow, I can't trust my currency anymore to hold its value, then that fleeting trust in the currency makes the value drop that much faster. So at a certain point, the Fed doesn't even need, or the banks don't even need to create more credit for the fiat dollar to lose its value. It can just be that people are getting out of their fiat quickly because they understand that it's not carrying the value over time. And so that itself creates that rapid inflection point that I'm talking about. So, that's another good point that Alistair McLeod, and he was a banker, like he's a hardcore currency guy. Like he says you should get into the metals at this point, but he was a banker. It's not like he doesn't, of all the people on the financial channels that talk about inflation or whatnot, he's probably one of the more pro fiat people, because he was a bank. He understands it, and it's not that everything about a fiat currency is bad. Like, it's nice to have a light piece of paper that represents your real money, but it needs to be stable over a long period of time for it to work. And so it's interesting to hear him say, the other side that people are missing is when people do start to grasp the understanding that their currency is losing its value, then just the mindset of the trust, because it's the only reason that people do accept this paper, like you were talking about earlier, Space Miner, when you said, I don't know why they accept the paper, but everybody wants to accept this paper right now. Well, all it is the mindset of the people that this is what we buy our goods and services with. And the reason that we originally had that mindset is because this was just a receipt for your real money. And then when we closed the window on the exchange for taking your receipt in for your real money, people just kind of thought, well, it represents money in their mind. And see, that allowed for this false reality of this last 50 years to take place. And of course, they tried to get us onto the petrodollar to help preserve it a little bit. But, it's really the mindset of the people. And so,
look, I'm not opposed to tokenization. Let's say it that way. I'm not opposed to tokenization in that regard. Like, it's really good to have like a common system, because when you got somebody in LA communicating with somebody in Miami, financially speaking,
yeah.
Like, do you really want to mail the silvers and golds back and forth?
Right.
No, you need trust that it's backed by something, right? That he has something in LA and he has something in Miami, and that this institution holds this in both places. And so if you say you can get it here, pick up I really think that'd be a sweet system. And I've brought this up before, that a business that had the money to put this together could really get somewhere with this, where, you have physical silver all over, as an example, physical silver all over the nation, one business, right? All over the nation, physical silver and tokenization. Where you can go anywhere, clean hands, show up and pick up fiat, gold, silver, whatever you want.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to that. And I understand fiat in that regard, because really it does speed things up.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, that's literally what the BRICS is planning on doing in their payment system, is they settle out their trade from month to month or year to year or quarter to quarter, whatever they settle on. And then they average out those balances, and like at the end of the quarter, okay, well, we owe you, 5 ounces of gold out of that transaction. So that's when
the trust must be there. And so must the value. So must the value.
Exactly. And once you have those two elements, there's not a problem. And that's that's literally the system that we're probably going to go back into before trust is reestablished.
Dude,
But
there's
see,
too many vaults coming up with IOUs for this to work.
that's the whole thing. Who was it has a famous quote of, it used to be IOU, gold, IOU silver, and then finally it became IOU nothing. And when it went to IOU nothings, that's what happened. Is you get a bunch of settlements of IOU nothing, and then you end up with no trust because you're not actually getting anything out of it if you're not exchanging the goods and the service. So like between country and country, that's where you know these big the big head, that's where these wars, a lot of them are coming. And this is, we'll go back in history, I mean, this is a reoccurring theme over and over, right? And so when we in the SWIFT system seized Russia's money, that was a huge mistake, and that's what kicked off the whole, well, I'm done trading nothing for nothing, and the system and the trust in this system is definitely gone. Well, what can they go back? Well, they can go back to their physical grain that they export to India, and India can export their minerals to Russia, and so they start doing trade in real material goods, and then they set out in something that has an intrinsic value, and then they're back to square one, back to where we started off on, and that's real reality, real goods for real services, and it's only logical, it's only fair.
Yeah, I've referred to that as a tangible asset-based economy that
Yes.
we're heading into, where like look, they're not exactly just going to go doling out loans. There's going to come a point where they're not going to just going to go doling out loans without some kind of oh, help me out, you'll leave it in return. What's the word for that?
When you do what now?
When you leave something in return on a loan, like you hold this and
your collateral.
Collateral, thank you. Pardon me. But yeah, like no, like we're really kind of getting there where like there's kind of got to be some collateral. Thank you, JM. And that's kind of what we're looking for, because there's, again, with trust has got to be earned and founded and and sometimes collected on. That's part of what builds the trust. Like,
Right.
how do you know it's there or not until you go to collect?
Right.
And it's, and which goes back to what I was saying earlier about, like, money needs to be moving or it does not meet the definition of money. If money's not moving, it's not money anymore, it's an asset. You see what I'm saying? Money is only good and is only a thing in its circulation, with an aspect of circulation on top of it. Because if you're not circulating it, then it's just an asset. Store of goods, whatever you want to call it, store of wealth, but it's not really like money until you start using it.
Well, okay, and I want to point, what you're touching on right now is the basis for gold and silver being money, being natural money. Because
Right.
whatever you're trading throughout, like you're saying, food eventually goes bad. Most things go bad after a certain time. So when you're looking for something to trade with another person that won't break down over time or start molding over time or have some issue over time that you can easily trade. Well, you can have my cow. Well, you're going to have a barn and a stable and food for that cow. Like you got, so instead of, trading that way, you trade the thing that is easily tradable, doesn't corrode, can't be melted away, it can't disappear on you. It's the one thing that everyone will accept because it is pure, it doesn't corrode, it doesn't go away, it doesn't mold, and it will be valuable and tradable anywhere in the world. And that's what makes it money. It's just the most liquid asset there is, and that's what makes it money. It stores its value. It's easily tradable. Everyone will accept it for goods and services, and you just, like we talk about those boxes that you tick off, and that's, nothing ticks all those boxes except gold and silver, and that's why it's just natural money throughout time. And speaking of tangible goods that tick all the boxes, we've been discussing that here of late. Oh, look at that. Nice. Putting mine to shame.
Hardly. Yeah. So, what do y'all think? I mean,
one thing that's pointed out here in the chat is that digital currency is coming. CBDCs are coming and unavoidable. And I would like to just touch on that a little bit.
Yep. Hop in.
So
we're already in the hole, man.
Right. So, obviously this is the ideal system that they're looking to impose. And I was talking to who was it, Tiger, earlier, and he was talking about the Genius Act and how he was surprised to see that idea, and how how it's taken hold and how good of an idea it was. And it's shocking to me that, like, this is why, in my opinion, we can't be looking to our leaders to help the citizenry, because putting us into a stable coin, which is anything but stable, you're attaching it to the value of the most devalued thing that we have.
Backed by nothing.
It's backed by the devaluing currency here. And it's supposed to be stable or remain at the, for every stable coin there's supposed to be $1, and this dollar is what's devaluing right now. And amazingly, they came up with this idea to let the citizenry buy our debt. The banks are no longer buying our debt. Other countries don't want to buy our debt. And so what do? And they're back there, they're kind of freaking out. They're like, what
kind of a snake eating its own tail, huh?
Yes. And they're like, what are we going to do? No one wants to buy our debt anymore. Well, let's open it up. We'll call it a Genius Act, and we'll say, that it's a stable coin, and we'll let the citizenry or anyone in the world buy it who wants to. And with most people looking back as they do on their life, and they think, well, I've been working my whole life hard trying to get a hold of these. So if I can buy into this stable coin that, has been the most valuable thing that I understand in my life, then they're going to buy into it. And people all across, it allows anyone in the world to buy into our debt. And so now you have our own citizenry, other citizens of different countries able to buy into our debt and purchase our debt. And it just allows them to kick the can possibly a little bit further down the road than they would, because no one else is buying our debt right now. Everybody's like, no, we understand that we're not going to get paid back. So now people are buying into that bad debt and know they're not going to get paid back in it, but they don't understand what's going on. And they're just, they're just going to use it to buy their goods and services without understanding the reality of what's taken place. So, and if enough people actually buy into it, then it does allow the currency to, continue devaluing into the future, further down the road, whereas it would, drop off much quicker if it wasn't for that idea. So I do have to admit that it is a good idea to scam the people. It's a well, it is. I mean, It's a great idea for allowing the people to be further defrauded, but it's again, it's horrible for the people, and it gets us into the mindset of this digital currency idea. The and a lot of people really will, as you were just saying, it's nice to be able to just send money digits on a screen and it gets there immediately, and then they can use that to purchase things. And that is definitely going to be the sales pitch that gets most people into it, let alone what they did with Bitcoin, which was just a gigantic, fish hook with a, big fat juicy worm on it to get people into that digital system. Get your heart and your wealth tied up into digits on the screen in the computer, and that's where your trust will be. That's where your heart will be. That's where you're going to put your value. And it's a huge deception, and the biggest problem with it is it allows for this enslavement system that this WEF, this World Council, wants us in. And it's like they say, they want us to own nothing and be happy. And these are simply
Eat
on
the
ramps.
bugs.
Say that again.
Eat the bugs.
Yeah. Well, these are on ramps to that. These are on ramps to them having complete control over the citizenry, being able to manipulate them into.
Speaking of control and manipulation, B, you see what I pinned up there on the screen? OC says, do we think the metals will rise tonight after midnight when it's officially shut down?
Because what's shut down?
Well, we've hit our dead clock again, man. Every year, shut down the government season. It's the shut down the government season.
Yeah, well, that's not going to shut down. It won't.
Well, I mean, they tend to suspend and freeze certain assets and certain salaries and expenditures and cards, and they shut down all sorts of crazy stuff.
They might shut it down.
I'm not dependent on tax money for my income completely. So
yeah,
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, tax money. So
yeah, well, I mean, they may shut it down for a little bit to scare people.
But that's not the question. The question is, do we think we'll see a rise in the metals because of this? Think about this. This ties perfectly in with what we're talking about. Fear, control, manipulation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Debts, assets,
Yeah. Well,
I think I'll say yes. I think that I think internationally speaking, I think a lot of governments are going to recognize a weakness in our spending power for a moment. And I think they'll capitalize on that. It could be used advantageously against us if there was like a collusion, a large enough collusion of force that if they bought up while we were in a weak purchasing power moment, I could see that affecting the price. I mean, they could almost affect it overnight like that. If they're like, looks like old US put a freeze on everything for a second. Let's run in and buy all this before it's competitive, before they can drive the price up on us too much, or put some resistance in there on us.
Right.
And we could also take advantage of those trying to those in bad situations, because look, right now, like China is as an example, dude, they'll buy your silver.
Right.
Any premium. They'll
buy your Dore at a markup cost and separate it out themselves. So they know what's up. But
so they could use this. They could use this tactically in a financial war, which we've been in financial war for a long time, trade war, economic war for a long time. If we have weak purchasing power like, legislative, if we're legally froze, I mean, how could we jump in and do anything about it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
maybe we could executively respond, but that's about it.
Firstly, I want to respond to OTG in the comment section that says, I say shut it down permanently, but that's just me. And I'm with you, OTG. And then we have Neil saying, I don't want to see America in a spot foreign government could take us over. We would have less freedom if that happened. Well, again, and I would kind of more lean towards OTG. Like, I think it's us, it's the people that's supposed to have the power. See, this is where we got off track. Is it's us, the people, that are supposed to have the power. It's not the government that's supposed to have the power. They're just our representatives. It's us that's supposed to have the power. And right now, I would be happy. I'm like with OTG. If they shut the government down, that all the government is doing right now is they're using their power to further put us into debt, to probably try to take away the guns if they can, to smash our First Amendment, our free speech. And this is all coming from our government. Now, if our government was actually representative of us, then I'm for it. But right now, where they're using their so-called power to take away the power of the people, I'm against it. And so it's an interesting concept. If the government shuts down, I don't think it will. They may shut down as a threat and then start it back up and say we got to reset on this new digital platform. I can see that happening. But I wouldn't have such a problem with a government shakedown. Like, let that thing shut down. Get the corruption out of here. The government's way too big right now, and let them be shaken out of there, and then let the people actually vote for, instead of the way they have it set up now, where they give you three people that they choose and they say you have to vote for one of our three cronies, and they give you two really, really evil people and then one so evil. So everybody just clings to the so evil and says, well, at least we didn't get the really, really evil one. Well, yeah, but I mean, that's not supposed to be what this thing was when we set it up, so.
Well, I'm going to just go ahead and do it. I don't care how comfortable the crowd feels. I'm going to say this is just going back to, it's the same spirit of the Pharisee and the Sadducee going on again. We had a very simple and fluid, naturalized system, that, like, we could look at our constitutional structure of government. It was very fluid, able to respond very deftly, very quickly. That the power was inherent in the people. It's what kept Japan out in the war. It's what powered us industrially. And then they came in and they started legislating. Here's a rule, there a rule. Little bit of tape here, a little bit of tape there, pop in some red flags over here. Next thing you know, Americans don't have the ability to just go out and mine. They don't have the ability to go out and just start a business.
Go out and fish. We can't catch a fish without
Can't catch a fish. Well, and they cite they cite reasonable reasons, like, well, if everybody just ran in there and grabbed the fish, we could have an extinction event overnight.
Fear mongering, yeah.
But the real reality of this is like, in a lot of these places where there are endangered species, it wouldn't be too hard or too difficult to enforce protection of the species in that localized area. Most of those areas are mostly inaccessible to people anyways.
Right.
Yeah,
no, there's ways to handle that, but
there are ways. um, it's not. Now, look, if America crashed overnight, like a war event, we got EMP'd overnight, dude. I could see some extinction level events coming from people trying to fill their bellies. You know, but right now, as it is, a bunch. Look, most Americans nowadays don't even own a firearm. And of those that own a firearm, most of them don't hunt. And of those that hunt, most of them don't have the skills to go after a lot of these critters, anyways, to find them, locate them, or make a shot, you
Mhm.
know, a shot or a trap. So yeah, it's that fear mongering.
Yeah.
Everybody puts 55 up and they're like, well, we got to have these laws in place, 55 miles an hour. It's got to be. If we don't, everybody's going to blow up and die, you know? But the fact is that everybody on the way to work's doing 65 anyways,
Yeah,
while
exactly.
somebody passes you at 70.
Right.
Do you
And
know
like,
what I'm
yeah,
saying?
and
And not
like we
everybody's blowing up and dying.
right. Yeah, and it just comes back to that common sense. Like, if someone is going 100 miles an hour and kills someone, on the road that's crossing the road, then, they should be put in jail for life for that or whatever. But like, if you're, like you were saying, if your wife is, suddenly has some complications and her water breaks and you got to get her to the hospital quickly, there's a reason to be driving at a high rate of speed, and you're taking into account the risk that's involved, but you're willing to go a little bit faster because you already have a high risk thing in your vehicle with you. And so, but these are things that should be naturally, that again, it just comes down to natural order and effect.
Yeah,
You're
what rights are, like, everybody's like, well, we got to protect your right to travel. Everybody's got a right to safety. No, you don't have a right to safety.
right, exactly.
But here's what we can do. How about instead of like creating like a bajillion laws based on what if?
Hmm.
Because, like, let's face it, the majority of the law is what if. Yeah, but what if? If you challenge people to the majority of these laws, their argument is literally starts with, yeah, but what if?
What if? Yeah,
But what if? Well, what if? Well, the same laws you're preparing to implement on the whole freaking world, you know, you could put that same kind of effort into just holding somebody accountable in a
exactly,
reasonable fashion based
exactly,
on the evidence and the criteria of the situation.
exactly.
There's nothing that's I don't see anything that says it's wrong to hold people accountable. Like, look, if you were being a jackass and did 90 miles an hour through a school zone and hit a kid, oh
Exactly.
buddy, if
No,
I was king, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But
no. When you don't hold people accountable, it creates lawlessness, and that's exactly what we have. We're not holding people accountable, and it's creating lawlessness. And they're like, "Oh, well, we just need to make more laws." It's
well, and
like,
the problem
no,
is with making those laws is the laws have limits legislated to them as well, like limits of punishment that they're prescribed into the law. Like, all right, well, if somebody does this, we've determined that it's worth this much time and this much money, and it does an injustice to the to the real victims,
right?
to victims of real crime,
Yeah,
or when a crime can't even be labeled as a crime. Sorry, we don't have a law for that. No, nothing here that says I can enforce reasonable behavior. You see,
yeah,
and so the whole thing, by limiting it, you actually do an injustice. And when the worst crime you could peg them for is speeding in that moment and a wreck. So maybe some what would you call that? Reckless driving, collision,
yeah,
property damage, and then each one of those has a cap, but nothing really. But in the meantime, you've lost your job because you can't get to work anymore. You
yeah,
know, and you're fighting with your insurance who may never pay you, or their insurance who may never pay you. He might
yeah.
not even have insurance, and all this while there is no justice
Right.
in that.
Exactly. It's going backwards indeed. I want to point out. OC Stacker says the big beautiful bill will keep ICE and deportation going, and I told Ian on my channel a while back, you watch, they're bringing in all these illegals. They were actually paying them. They were flying them into the deep into the states, not just they would get them to the border and then they'd fly them deep into the states and they would give them a credit card with money on it and so they're bringing it and I and I was saying, like, why are they doing? They're like, oh, they're just doing it so that they can get their voter base up. I'm like, well, that might be part of it, but there's more to it than that. And I said, you watch, there will be something to do with digital IDs from this. And sure enough, this is now where we're at. That's exactly why Kia Starmer, that was the excuse he used is, oh, we're gonna implement this digital ID and that's gonna stop these foreigners from coming in. Well, we know that was like that's why I pointed it out before it happened, that you watch, this is what it will be about, because they're doing these things on purpose. And like OC says, the big beautiful bill that prints more money out of thin air will be given to ICE enforcement. And now I believe in coming in lawfully. I don't have a problem with immigration. My wife is an immigrant.
Did you mean to say legally or lawfully?
Lawfully.
Okay, just checking what I heard.
Yep, thank you. And so, but this big beautiful bill that they're going to use for ICE to put on masks, to have basically military strapped up uniforms, machine guns. They come in Humvees and Raptors. I mean, they are, they're coming. I mean, it's military style. No kidding around here. And they're wearing masks that you can't see them, and it's becoming a normal thing. And you say,
well, thuggery, man.
Well, right, and people say, well, what, you want these guys running around without? I'm like, no, you don't understand. They paid them to get them here. They emptied jails and paid them to come here to cause problems. And so, yes, of course I want them out. But what people don't realize is happening in the meantime is it's creating a stage where people are getting used to seeing masked thugs with machine guns jumping out of Humvee Raptors and grabbing people off the street and throwing them into an unmarked van. And if you seen that before there was ICE, you would report it. You would be scared. You'd be like, holy cow, just a bunch of masked thugs just pulled somebody off the street and beat them up and threw them into a van. And it's creating this precedent to where, oh, well, that's just
ICE. Dystopian, dude.
That's just ICE. They're just doing their job. And it's like, well, how do you don't know that? For all you know, that's me. And they just took me for no good reason because I said something on my platform that they didn't like. And that is not a good precedent to have in our country, mind you. Now, no, it doesn't mean that I want a bunch of people out of jails that are, illegal, unlawful, and creating havoc in our towns. And no, yes, that's not good, but it doesn't. They're setting that up so that they can do.
I don't like that false binary. Just for the record, before you walk past that too quick, I don't like that false binary they present us. That it's either going to be this, it's either the law and everything's perfect and good, or it's and we give these guys the masks and we let them go like a bunch of thugs, or we have complete riotous where we'll have thugs in masks with guns kidnapping people. Like, it's the same fucking thing on both ends right now, is how I see this. And they're trying to suggest this false binary that you must have this like complete authoritarian regime, or you'll have complete anarchy on the other side. And I'm like, oh no, I accept neither, because I don't believe it. I don't believe that if we canceled all the law tomorrow, although I do believe people can be quite like, look, everybody's a sinner. Let me say it that way, okay?
Sure.
We're all sinners, right?
Sure.
But I don't think that if they came on TV tomorrow and said all laws are off, you're completely free again, right? Completely natural, right? I really don't think it's going to be as big a deal as people would like to be
No, no,
fearful. I think
no.
most people are just going to be like, okay, so I don't have to get registration and insurance anymore. And you know
Exactly.
what? There will be some natural clashing. There will be a little bit of blood spilled. But in that, we will develop a culture of respect, tolerance, because
An
these things have to
armed
be cultured.
that goes back to that statement. An armed society is a polite society. And it's true. And I believe if the government did shut down and we got rid of our government, I do believe that we would be better off, because the idea that America is built on doing unto others as you would have done to yourself, basically. And as long as you're not robbing someone, or killing someone, or defrauding someone, you have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah,
And
this is self-evident.
yes, and you wouldn't have a pirate thuggery running the roads and pulling you over and taking your goods without doing searches and seizures, without probable cause. And we're to that point now, and that's where I'm kind of pointing out we shouldn't be. And the root of why we get so out of hand is a foul money system. Like this fuels corruption.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be possible without it, without that support that we've been detached from as a private citizenry, right? Like, because think about it. Originally, pre 1913, okay, when you wanted to have a war, you went around on a train across the nation, and people bought war bonds if they wanted to support that war. You sold war bonds, you sold tickets, you sold parts of the war, and you said, support this war, and you paid money for that war. And if they couldn't get the money together, they'd lose the war or not start the war. And that's, and again, war was supposed to, I mean, we've just blown through our constitution on my, I'm devolving here. The point is is you've mentioned this a couple times tonight, and I think it's really the key. The strength of the American people is the American people, and
Yes.
and and if we start, like, look, we could disconnect, like, legally and lawfully disconnect from them tomorrow, like, just stop tomorrow and start trading amongst each other privately. Just
Yep.
stop using the USD.
Yep.
There's no law that says you have to use USD.
Yep. And in fact, we've got our good buddy that I've interviewed, JP Cortez, who is going around to the States and setting it up to where we can even pay our taxes in gold and silver. So, and like I said earlier in this podcast, I'm already setting up with my local farmers how I can get good beef, grass raised beef, and get it before it goes through all the processing plants and gets approved. And I pay for it in gold and silver. And like, just let's get that system running on our own.
And guess what? If if we did, that, the power of your purchasing power would rapidly increase,
Yes.
because supply would be instantly thinned. If everybody ran out tomorrow and started buying up the silver, you know, and converted out of that, silver would be a tight. It would be a very tight commodity here.
It is a tight commodity, and it's only going to get tighter from here. We are in it. We have left the realm of when I first started stacking 15, 20, $30. That's gone. We are in another, and it's only going to exponentially get tighter. And it's funny. I was joking on my channel, like on the back end, people are buying up the 1,000 ounce bars. The 1,000 ounce bars have a bigger premium than 1 ounce rounds, which is completely backwards. That's not the way it should be. And you know, it's funny how backwards things are right now, but it's gonna work its way back down to retail. Premiums are gonna absolutely skyrocket on this stuff. It's just, and we have crossed over into a new realm where, you know, what we've been experiencing, where the premiums go up really high and then they'll smash the spot price down and premiums collapse, and suddenly you've got cheap silver with no premiums. Those days, I think, are done and gone. Just my own personal take on that.
Yeah, well, remember what I said a little while back about China? Like, I felt like, looking at China was like a glimpse into the future, of our state, because you look at how, because China's already kind of gone through this fall and they're well on their way down, anyways, and like, even though they're still a powerhouse, they're on their way down too. And you see how their people are responding, and their people are saying, I'll take your precious metals at any cost,
Yep.
you know. And so when we're looking at them, we really do have a good, clean picture of what we're about to go into and what
Yep.
we're already kind of seeing highlights of. And we can isolate and insulate from this, but it's going to be tough to do unless we can get more people on board with this. And like you were mentioning earlier, this is that alchemy moment. you know like, if there was ever a moment like right now, because look, there's still a lot of people out there that still want an American dollar, because guess what, theirs is crashing faster than yours. So
Indeed. Yep.
they'll still be happy to take your American dollar.
Yep.
And but if you're not converting your American dollar into something that'll translate into a bunch of different types of dollars, then you're not doing yourself any favors.
Right.
Because what's going to communicate better than a US dollar? Piece of gold or silver.
Yeah.
That'll translate with way more. And you're going to talk to way more countries with gold and silver than you'll ever talk in paper.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
For sure.
what do we got going on in chat? Are they just
OTG is just always cracking me up. He's just saying, "Don't tempt me with a good time of foreigners trying to invade."
yeah, they're having fun, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Man, you guys doing all right in there? Are we boring you? Or are we capturing this? You guys in with us on this? I mean, I think we're all here, dude. I'm not going to speak for the world by any means, but I think there's a lot of us I think there's more of us than we even realize right now. I think there's a lot of us that haven't like had access to the social circles that we are all in,
Yeah.
that aren't in the information curve, in the information wave. That aren't privy to some of these conversations.
Right.
And so, but it's interesting because when you go out into the public and you're having these conversations with the public, you find these micro moments of agreement, like common agreements, like everybody's just done tired of this, done tired of that, understanding, we all know the price of bread's going up, and
Right.
you can't hide that. And there is a natural affinity for people to look for an escape from this. Like, most people are saying, like, all right, how do I turn a buck around? How do I turn a buck into two? And they're not really thinking about, like, dude, by the time you turn your buck into two, it's fell by half.
Exactly. Now you're back to $1. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
No, for
And
sure.
yeah. OGG, mostly on the same page. Yeah, I think so. I think the American people, but there is a great divide among us of the brainwashed and the not, of and I think there's a lot of people that have lived amongst the brainwashed and been quite uncomfortable and in disagreement, but never really had the communicative skills, like the practiced lines, the rehearsed speeches,
Yeah.
they don't have the vocabulary set and ready to communicate these things,
Yeah.
you know, because they
Yeah.
just don't know.
And often, yeah, it wouldn't do any good outcome anyway. It'd just be an argument. Like it wouldn't do any good anyway. So
You got to walk a guy back 20 steps just to talk about the last thing he said half the time.
right.
And he's only going to walk back 2 steps before he puts his foot into the ground, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of work. But like you say, I think there's so many good people that do have their head on. If you just like, let's say the government shutdown did happen and we were able to disperse the bad apples out of it, that your average good person would just get his business going. Like, oh wow, I got rid of all that red tape. Finally, now I can get my business on up and running good. And all the people who are just weird and completely down the wrong track and have been brainwashed into ridiculousness, they're gonna just fall by the wayside. They're gonna be crying and having a rough time, but after a while the world is gonna be back on the right track, and they're gonna want to get back on board and get going, and the problems would just kind of fade away, I think. But that's me with a wishing everything would just go okay type of an attitude. But I really think that you get rid of a lot of the problems. You put real money back in people's hands, and take away all this red tape that hinders and causes problems from you starting a business, and all of your money goes to the taxation to a corrupt government. You get rid of all that stuff, and I think we would kick up our industry. We would pick up on we would start rebuilding our country and taking off again. I think it would be a bit of a struggle for sure in the beginning, but you give a free people good money and no red tape, only good can come from that. I mean, there's only one way. We're already down at there's only one way we can go from the bottom
Well,
anyway. So
Neil was pointing out earlier in this live, that we have invested a bunch into this. We as a nation have recognized this, that we have a problem. We have invested. We did it way too late, right? So now we're in this crucial stage where normally we would have international support to do something about it, meaning like
right,
international goods at reasonable fees, right? So that we could build massive skyscrapers and giant generation plants and stuff, right? But
we managed to make some enemies, didn't we?
well, what do I always say, man? It's like one of my favorite things to say. If your buddy the dealer ain't your buddy anymore, you still think you're getting a deal from your dealer?
Right. Yep. Right.
Yep, because and here we are, and like as much money as we crunched into it, like this is that's just, I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're just getting past the politicians at that. I mean, we haven't even hit shovels to the ground with that money. Most of this is lining the pockets and building up mutual funds and
Hey, yeah, let us.
pays and government entities around this. Most of that is in the creation of the executive side of things. How many jobs? We see this all the stupid time. You got like 50 people in there doing nothing, and everybody's got a job, and their whole job is about this one little stupid thing, and it's these entire stacks of papers to fill out about the stupid thing and information to collect and a bunch of busybody. It's busybody, you
Yeah.
know, and that's where huge sums of this money goes. And if it was up to the private entities, it would be streamlined because
Yes.
they want to make the most out of their money.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so when we talk about this government funding of, oh, this we've invested millions and billions and trillions or whatever.
There's your problem right there. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, like, dude, like by the time it hits the politician tax, by the time it hits the executive tax, by the time it hits the administrative tax, and by the time it hits your fucking income tax, it's nothing. It's
Yep.
nothing. Man.
Yep. OTG wrapped it up here. He said, "Government anything is the least efficient method." Indeed.
Right.
And they have to see that to keep this Ponzi scheme going, they have to print more money out of thin air. So they have to come up with like some ridiculous thing for them to put money into. And so they just make up all these ridiculous things to pump money into. And it's just like OTG says, the most inefficient of anything. And that literally, yeah, that is a big problem. Like if you just took all of that red tape and got rid of the schemes and you just let honest people have honest money and build an honest business, we would prosper like crazy.
Well, and again, if like listen, if Americans are standing on their principles and standing on their ethics, then when they say shit like, well, we care about our environment, well, then why don't you buy from the guy that's doing something about it
Yep.
and boycott the one that you don't like his environmental practice?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
if that guy actually
Monsanto.
did something destructive that affected the public, then hold his ass accountable.
Exactly.
Good golly.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
not that difficult.
Oh, it really is simple. And that's kind of the thing. Like it, you get rid of the corruption and simplicity the cream will rise to the top and things will start working and
Put your money where your mouth is as an American citizen. And that's how you will affect it, you know?
and you let people grow their own food and you don't have a big corporation like Monsanto that you can only grow their GMO crops and their GMO crops will only grow with the chemicals that you have to buy for them to get them to grow and it kills everything that's good and it's like you get rid of all that junk and let the farmer do it his way, the natural way with good, good wholesome crops, problem solved. No
Well,
more, no more hunger. And you know,
JM had it earlier. Also, I think he had mentioned something along the lines of like innovation is stagnant because there's like think about it, like how many people out there want to create their own vehicle to drive on the road, would love to build their own vehicle, but they can't, you know, because or would love to release their own line of vehicle, but they can't because of all this red tape and required
yep,
XYZ,
yep,
you know. Well, we don't want people to be held accountable to their bad decisions, i.e., they bought a bad product and wrecked themselves,
right,
you know. And again, hold his ass accountable. Like,
yeah,
no, man, this is a reasonable expectation. I think the jury would agree.
yeah. And OTG, we know that's brings out another great point. We were talking about this earlier. OTG, he says the powers that be don't want us to prosper, and that really is the key here. Just as I was pointing out earlier, you know, this was done to kick the legs out from the US. This was a deliberate thing. And they're putting us they've deliberately hurt the farmer and closed most farmers have shut down from how bad they've gotten treated. And on and on you can go down the list they've weakened us to such a point and they're trying to get us to rely on something that continually loses its value so we're continually getting weaker and weaker and like OTG is saying they don't want us to prosper and that again that to me this is not just a fleeting point to be made. This is this is huge. This is literally will sink our country. And I believe that we had a lot of good things going for us as the U.S. Now, I would have to firstly have to start off and agree with right where we started out. Not that there wasn't problems within the indigenous people here, but the way we treated the Indians, I wasn't there, so I would need to do more studying on it, but I have heard some pretty gross and disgusting stories about how we treated them.
Well, and I'm gonna
So I
contrarian.
mean,
Here I am, contrarian. Um, you look at history and look, a good deal of these indigenous peoples we're already doing some
pretty bad stuff. No,
pretty, pretty bad stuff already.
yep,
And there's a lot of like when you start looking at some of the more accurate pieces of history, you start finding that like like when you go back to the Spanish and the Aztec, right, and the Mayan and all this, and the Central American, right, and you look at what was going on. Like I mean, we're talking about a brutal,
yes,
savage
yes,
culture that
right,
when you walk into this, like it strikes so deep to the human heart,
yeah.
and at that point you have to make a decision as a people group, like a government entity, a nation. You have to make a decision. Do we live by subjective values or do we live by objective values? And if you say we live by objective values, then you got to do something about this, dude, because
Yeah.
this is not right.
Yeah, no, I agree that, I just also like we have to look at both sides of that coin. Like, yes, I agree that like literally the Aztecs, from what I understood, were literally like you say, gets to the heart. Well, they were eating people's hearts, probably for the adrenochrome and all the stuff that goes along with it. And but we also there was some Indian tribes who were probably would have tried to get along with us just fine, and since we had bad experience elsewhere, where some tribe came in and raped the women and did bad things, well, then the next group that we see, we go do that same thing to them, and it becomes this tit for tat, and that's no way. So
Well,
without
like
I
right
don't
now,
want
the
you.
Muslim culture, like the Middle Eastern culture, for the most part, they views our ways as abhorrent. They feel the same way about us as
Sure.
we might have as the Spanish did the Aztec. You see what I'm saying? At that time,
Yeah,
it's really no different. So, like, do they have the right to come in and correct us? And my answer to that would be no. And do I have the right to come in and correct them? And my answer to that is no, because
right,
my objective value basis lies inherently that I am a creation of God. When,
indeed,
and when I say that, that means I am no better than you. You are no better than me. You don't have rights over me. You
right.
don't have right to dominate. Like, listen, if
I
what I
agree.
believe is true, then we're just a bunch of dirt balls walking around. And I
Yeah.
have no authority on this dirt to say to that piece of dirt that this piece of dirt has rights over that piece of dirt. And that piece of dirt doesn't get to enjoy
Has
the
no rights. Yeah, no,
dirt
exactly.
from that dirt.
Right.
It's like it's so convoluted when you bring it back down to the core of what we're looking at. It's
Well, that's kind of, without getting too deep into it, that was kind of my point, is like what are the good side of what America is built on, which is we all have these inalienable rights given to us by our creator, and we have no right, like you're saying, to murder, steal from someone else that's under that creator. If you build off of those bases, we have a lot of great things that this country stood for, and I would like to see us get back to. And I think if we did that, we could be very prosperous again. But it literally will take that. It will take us back, getting back to those things, getting back to understanding that our rights aren't given to us by our government. They're inalienable rights. that come
Yeah.
from the
I
Creator.
hate it when people say that. Like the Constitution gives me that right.
Right.
I'm like,
No, exactly.
gross,
Like,
gross. You know, no, no. It acknowledges that right. It
exactly.
amends. It memorializes that right. But it
Yes.
no.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, that makes me sick, man. I hate that statement. I really do. Because
Yeah.
it's one of the core functions of the deceit.
Yes. And then to me, we're at an inflection point on that point where we have our government trying to dictate all these things to us and say, well, we'll go ahead and allow you to have the right to do this if you get a digital ID and you enslave yourself to.
Allow you the
Oh,
right. See, right
exactly.
away.
It's not a thing. And if so,
There
that's
is no such thing as allowing you the right or giving you the
exactly.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. So, to me, that's why, it wouldn't hurt me so bad if I seen the government shut down. Because if we could kick off that corruption and get back to them actually being representatives of us, the way it's supposed to be, that's literally supposed to be what it is.
Well, even most state constitutions, if you read the majority of state, I like to. I'm a geek like that, but like I like to read like state constitutions and stuff, right? Well, in a lot of those, in the preamble of them, they expressly dictate that these are to be a benefit and not a hindrance. That the law is to serve and be a benefit to the people and not a hindrance,
Right.
not an obstruction.
Boy, I wish that was the case, huh?
They word it in a variety of ways, but the basic premise of that is that, like, no, this is really like, here's something. This is quite personal, right? This is very anecdotal, but I think it's a good point to make. Is whenever I bought this piece of property, it was a brand new sectioned off piece of property. It hasn't received a residential address yet, and because the one above me was already number two, like the original plot was number two. You don't go under number two on that side, right? It's how addressing works. And so they labeled it 2A. Okay. And, but in the
Ooh,
system,
hey, that's a cool piece of property to have.
yeah, it's dope, dude. I'm super happy about that. And, and so in the system, though, the at the county in the dispatch, and this is where the whole fucking problem of this lies. Excuse my language; it irritates the mess out of me. I go down there and I say to put in my address, and then they put in the address and they say everything's good, and I say cool, it's like this, and like all check, right? Well, come to find out, the computer had input it as 2 Unit A, and I said that's a problem. And they're like, well, the system won't input it anyway. And I said, well, then change it. Just can't
Right.
you input it like this? And they're like, well, it's built this way. And I'm like, well, then who built the system?
Right.
Call that guy up and tell him to put in an extra button because this ain't gonna work.
Right.
And they don't like that kind of attitude.
It's
But
funny.
the point is that I cite them the New Mexico Constitution and I say, this is the law and the government is supposed to be here to serve me as an individual. This is part of being in a republic, is that I as an individual carry just as much weight as the government, because I am the
More
government.
so, actually, more so.
Right.
They're right.
You're supposed to serve me.
Yes.
All this money and all this power and all this technology is supposed to be here to fix little issues like this.
Yep.
And I know it seems petty and trivial to some, but it's not.
Right.
It's the core point, because here's my point. They have this in the dispatch system. Okay. They have it in the dispatch system as 2 Unit A. Well, I'm before number 2. So if you're doing your damn job, if you have a life-changing, you got 30 seconds to make that life-changing choice. In 30 seconds, I'm going to die if you're not to me. And you pull up to the address, and one is 2A and the other is 2 Unit A. What are you going to do? You're going to go to number 2, and then you're going to look for the Unit A within number 2.
Right. Good point.
And the same for the postal. If you're doing your job as a postal person, they should
Right.
never drop it here when it says 2 Unit A. They should be trying to figure out how to get it next door at number 2 and letting them figure out where fucking Unit A is, you know? And so, but the point is I can't get them to change the stupid system. And this is a real life representation of being led by the system instead of the people leading the system. And it's completely 180 degrees. And so now I have this giant obstruction in my life now that really screws things up. It delays mail and it sends kickbacks mail and if I call 911 for a real emergency and they do their damn job, they're going next door, not to me. That's a fucking problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's funny. Like that, there's several things housed within that one example. Another one I'd like to touch on is that it's funny that when you took that to the, whoever you took it to, and they said, well, that's how the computer has it. In their mind, they're like, well, you just need to go along with this because this is how the computer has it. And it's
It
like,
really is.
yes, and that is so.
It's their God.
Yes, and I experience this often, and it's like, look, you guys, we're humanity here, and this is supposed to be for humanity, not us underneath a computer. Like, oh, well, the system says, like, and somehow we're falling into that really quickly, where, oh, but the computer doesn't say that. I'm like, yeah, but you're on the other side of the till, or you're, what, wherever you're working from, and I'm communicating with you and I'm telling you human to human, and we both cognitively understand the right thing, but since the computer says, we're going to go with, and it's like,
But the computer says.
exactly. Yeah. No.
Yeah, your little God, your little G God, the computer, the law, the policy, the procedure, the pattern, the practice, like don't make me walk around here like a human thesaurus to make this point clear. Like it's so simple. It's so simple. And if you got a bug in the system, just call the guy that wrote it.
Right.
Hey, got a bug. Can you fix this?
Right.
Take you 15 minutes probably, or whatever.
Yeah, and be heartfelt for the person you're working with. Like, they're a person, and you understand that they're in the right and that they need this thing, or they need something changed, or and
You
so
tithe your cumin and your mint, but you forget the weightier matters of the law.
there you go. There you go. It's like you gotta get back to humanity level and have an actual heart for your fellow man. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? Like another one, like, we're far off from these basic truths that make us human, and that we're supposed to be at the pinnacle of this whole thing. And here we are, but the computer says.
But the computer says,
Yeah.
well, how much worse is it, dude? Like, holy moly. Like, I already hate dealing with like PayPal or like something like that whenever it like kicks back. It kicks back my purchase, right? Like I'm trying to like time capture a purchase, right?
Yeah.
Like I need to get this in now or the rate goes up, right?
Right.
And it kicks back my purchase. And then it's like, oh, well, we'll just refund you. And then it'll be back in 5 fucking days. What's it gonna be like when our entire monetary system is like that?
Exactly.
And who do you call for customer service when it's the US government? Dude, I can't get them to change my address. You think
Yeah,
they
and
get
what if
on my paycheck? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, and what if, like, and they're trying to connect our money credit with carbon credits, like with, you ate too much beef, so now you can't go on this trip, or you like this. It's gonna get crazy when we trip, and it's right at our door. Like, right, I wish I could get people to understand. This is it. Like, if we were ever to take a stand, this digital ID and this digital money system is like where we should draw the line. Like, this should be a universally understood that this is for everyone a line that can't be crossed. Um, to me, that's this is the big one. This is the one that because if we go into this new system, we have enslaved ourselves to the system for good, and I like, and until some miracle happens to get us out of it. But how is that going to happen? Because they're the people at the top that I'm talking about that are corrupt, that are trying to hurt us in all these ways and take away all our rights. They're going to be the ones in control of the new system. And so if we allow ourselves to fall into this new system, my kids, their kids, on and on, will just be enslaved in a way that I can't even hardly wrap my mind around how bad it's going to be. But I have a feeling it's going to be pretty bad. You won't have the freedom to travel. You won't. Those will be like, that'll be a crazy thought to people. Like, oh, you used to could just go where you want to and buy what you wanted to, and like, that'll be a distant past that people won't even hardly believe could have existed.
Well, here's a structure that I don't think most Americans are ready for, a hypothetical. Okay. Is we talk about this immigration issue, right? And borders. And we forget that here in the United States, we are in essence like little mini countries, each state. It's like a little mini country. And this is important if we have any foreigners that don't quite understand our system. Each state is like a little, it's exactly what the intended purpose of the word is for, state. It's like a little mini country, right? And it could hypothetically be enforced. In fact, it was during the COVID years. It was enforced, state boundaries, state lines, and travel across them. And so when we start talking about immigration issues could be enforced interstate as well. And that could be also done on the federal level, interstate restriction, or at least on federal traveling. But I'm just saying, like, it is a hypothetical legal structure that could exist, could be enforced. And I don't think people are ready for that. Like this real ID among states is also a real issue and a real thing that, even if I understood correctly, I don't know, it's been a while since I've flown, but if I understood correctly, like without a real ID, they might not even let you fly within the states in certain places without a real
So,
ID.
so I just got myself a ticket for this upcoming event, right? I just did this. And there's literally, I haven't got my printout yet. It's probably up there, but on the website it talked about the real ID and getting and flying, and it said if you don't have a real ID, expect delays. They're going to have to take you through this separate area. You're going to have to go through this whole search process. They're just making it, and it might cost more. Like, they're just trying to make it very, very hard for you and frustrating for you so that you'll just get this real ID, which is funny. Like, this should be a huge tell for people, guys. They're not gaining anything different out of the real ID from a driver's license. They're not.
No, they're just practicing legislation, bro.
And they're just getting us into so that they can put us into this new system and make us slaves.
It's the development of precedent. They're creating precedent that you can't argue with in the future. They're going to be using people's own words against them. The same reasons they argued for it, for something simple like a real ID. And everybody accepted it. When they take it the next step, they're going to be like, this is no different than what you already accepted. You already have a real ID. It's
Right.
no different. Why do
Right.
you have a problem with it? Give me your arguments. Because most people have argued for their own enslavement and don't even realize it.
Yes. Yeah. We've been bamboozled because, the terrorists, we got to. Oh, man. Like, see, if you understand that, like, I for 9/11, like, hopefully most people have figured out the whole 9/11 thing was not a bunch of guys with box cutters, and for those who think that, okay, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you, but that was not
Sorry, we're in the rabbit pit. It's a little fuzzy around here. So
good point. So, you know, um, and they did that, and they passed the what? The Patriot Act, which, oh, we got to be patriotic, right? It's the exact opposite of patriotic. Exact opposite of patriotic. And see, it's hard on a mind when you do know the truth to watch everyone else fall for the lie that, well, this, you got to be paid. This is good because there's terrorists out there with box cutters, so we got to take away all of our patriot rights, you know, so that we can stop this terrorism. Well, when the words they use are the exact opposite of what's actually being passed, the stable coin, no, it's the exact opposite of stable. I mean, whatever it's the word is they'll flip it on its head. The Genius Act, this is not genius, this is tomfoolery. um so
well, and how long before it's pretty much just a forced thing where the only thing they will accept is this?
there's one thing left. It's this line that we're about to cross. When we cross over into the digital ID with the digital money, that's it. After that, it will all be forced, and they won't have to play games with making names that mean the exact opposite of what they're saying it is. They will all be forced from then on out, and they won't care about you being a human. It'll be the computer says, and that's the end of story. And that is like, this is the one thing that I think it's our one stand. It is the one last place where I'm kind of out here saying, we we got to try to at least fight back on this one, because it's the last one. It's there's no coming back out of that, because once that digital ID with that digital CBDC infrastructure is in place, they have cameras absolutely everywhere, and they're going to know our podcasts. They're going to have software that runs algorithms that anybody that was talking about 9/11 or the Patriot Act or stable coins not being stable, they're just going to have bots listening for people like me, and you're gonna, when you drive through, when you're driving down the street, your car is going to be lit up like a Christmas tree of warnings, and they're going to know every light intersection you cross through. They're going to be watching you like a hawk. So, like, you know this is that line that I wish that we could all kind of come together on and say no. And I know a lot of people just feel like we have no power left, but actually we do. And the reason that they're trying to be so tricky and slippery and name things the opposite of what they mean is because they don't have the power over us. They are trying to um trick us into these things because we're not there yet. And you
Well,
know
consent. Consent.
exactly.
They need to build the consent. They need to give people enough reasons to consent to the next stupid thing. You
And
know,
if we consent to this next thing, we are literally signing our everything away.
I
So
mean,
this has to be the one that we stand on. Now, you know, that's just me being honest. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen or work, but I think that this is something that we should not go along with, because if you, and then maybe you don't have kids, and maybe if you're old and you don't care, I understand that, but like if you're like me and you have kids, And I've homeschooled my kids. They're actually good kids that are wholesome and not like, they're good kids, man. And I'm gonna be turning them into a slave if I go through with this. And I'm trying to raise them right. And I just feel like if we go along with this, it won't matter what they do. They will already be put into it's like they're in the prison at that point. There's no, like right now we're on the outside of the prison. And once we sign into this, now they're on the inside of the prison. And it won't have anything to do with how they live their life because they're already in prison. And so, I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's not like it's going to be a law that they force on everybody. It's going to be a standard of living. It's a corporate enforcement of a sort. Like if you look at how the mask, how they got away with the mask, man, it really was a corporate enforcement. There was no
Oh,
law that
for
said you
sure.
have to wear a
For
mask.
sure.
There
Yes.
wasn't.
Yes.
It
Yes.
was pure corporate enforcement
Yep.
of the law.
Yep.
And that's how they get around. It's a proxy war. It's relative to a proxy war. That they, all right, fine, we can't make it a law, then we'll just make a corporate policy.
Exactly. Yeah, and the United States became a corporation as part of the whole trickery. It's so funny.
Ta-da!
JM
You pulled
Unleashed,
the rabbit out of the hat.
yeah. JM Unleashed says word magic, which is true. And then under that, OTG says my Combin will always have hoops. But then he says they have cameras everywhere, but Charlie Kirk's murder scene 5 minutes after. And I think that's just so hilarious. So true. Oh man, you crack me up, OTG.
Isn't he so awesome to have around? I mean, I really do appreciate OTG. I have for a while. Thanks, OTG, for being around.
Yeah.
The troll we didn't deserve, but we got anyways. No, we love you. It's all love in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're whew. Yeah, this is great, dude. This is exactly the kind of talks I wanted to have tonight, man. This is exactly the kind of stuff I wanted to talk about. We're not talking about it. I mean, they've got look, at first it was just pop culture style influence. And then they started bringing on the drama. And then but dude, they have amped up the psyop war, man. I mean, it is full on black flags,
red flags, every type of flag you can think of.
Yep.
Propaganda beyond belief.
Holy moly, buddy. Oh, I mean, and it's really not too hard to see through this. Like, look, if back to that objective reality, dude, I live under an objective reality, and therefore it gives me a really good filter.
If you allow yourself to see through it, it becomes pretty easy. But see, there's a lot of people that won't. They try to figure it out through the narrative that's being given to them.
Because I think a lot of their life is built on these structures. Like one of the terms I hate hearing is law abiding. Law abiding. I'm a law abider. Like, whoa, abiding by what law? Whose
Right,
law?
exactly. Yeah,
Whose law? What law? What law are you abiding by? What makes you so wonderful? When the law is to get on the train, do you just hop on the train?
yeah,
When the law is get in the shower, you just
yeah,
hop in the shower.
yeah.
Like there's nothing patriotic about being a law abider. What's patriotic is being a respecter of your fellow man. That's patriotic.
Yeah.
That's
And that's
what I
basically what I was meaning about the Indian. Like, I'm sure there was, I don't want to get too deep in that, but we should treat everyone with that same, man to man, because they have the same God-given rights that we do. And so, you know, now, anyone who's acting outside of that and ridiculous, then they fall into that category just as anybody else would.
I don't
But
need a law to tell me murder is wrong to know that murder is wrong.
exactly. And so you just get back to some of those obvious basics, and there's really no issue.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the the law never saved anybody. It
Right.
just it just allowed us to put an agreed upon label. Like, and even then, I'm not so sure that message carries over quite right either. But
Right.
like,
And all the law does is bring death.
death,
Like, and so yes, there's um good things about understanding laws that will kill you. Like, that's good, but to live on death, like, a lot of people want to live from the laws, and the laws are just death. The law, there's no life in them.
the sting of death is in sin. The strength of sin is in the law.
There you go. So
And had I not known the law, I'd be blameless. But now that I know the law, I'm guilty. And and what does the guilt do? It just provides a label to punish, destroy.
right. But see, if you know that all these rights are inalienable, and that we all get them from our creator, and that spirit that gives life allows us to have dominion over the law. Now you do have life, and those laws can't kill you because you have that freedom in that. And so that's what we need to get back to, and loving our neighbors ourselves, and then all those other things fall into that. And that's where our freedoms lie, and that's where we need to get back to. And you can, well, I'll just stop there. I won't go too far down that trail.
you know, um, the best way a guy can isolate and insulate himself from this world right now is really is just living an ethical life. Like, most of the problems in your life will just not be there. You won't have an availability for these problems to even present themselves. Like, what I never deal with? I never deal with a fight at the club.
Right.
I'll never deal with a fight at a club.
I used to quite a bit, but not anymore.
I'm done. I'll never be there.
Yeah.
I ain't worried about that no more. Some problems just go away with certain life choices.
Yep.
And
True that.
but, and along with those choices becomes, like, listen, back to the pillars of wealth. Like, here's what the human race is after: reproduction. We need shelter, which means we need some dirt, put some shelter over our heads.
Mm-hmm.
We need some food. We
Mm-hmm.
need something to drink, and we need to reproduce, and then we need to take care of what we reproduce. And so,
Getting down to the basics here.
well, and it really is, right? And if you start there and you focus on providing that for yourself, right? Like, most of the time, like, that's where the majority of your effort will be spent there anyways. It will probably most likely require some kind of cooperation with your locals, whether it be building materials or tradesmen, and your local farmers and growers, and it's the thing that makes the community run, right?
Mm-hmm.
And which goes along to right what we were saying. If
Yep.
if every plant you grow at your house is one less veggie or piece of fruit you got to buy at the store, which means it's one more cash dollar that you can convert to one more ounce.
Yep. Yep. Which we had a fairly decent garden this year. I don't know how you did, but ours turned out pretty good, pretty decent.
Ours, I got one fig. I got my first fig.
Really? I don't.
Yeah, I got a fig. Oh, and well, the wife and kids got figs while I was out on duty, but they saved one fig for me. There was one that ripened right when I got home, so I got
Nice.
a fig this year. But
Cool.
next year, that means that all of them are going to produce now because they all kind of tried, and which was pretty cool. They tried, you know, and it's really hot around here. That sun
Right.
will yeah, and so they have a hard time until like fall, like spring or fall. They do really good, but anyways,
Yeah, no, there's nothing better than like, we have some grapevines that, oh, not only do they smell amazing, you can just walk on it. I built these overhangs that you can just walk underneath of it and it provides shade for you. And so like you go stand in the shade and just reach up and eat on some
that's
fruits, and it's
cool.
just
That's right. What we're doing. We had an old like little solar shed, like a greenhouse shed thing, Amazon thing, and we just the tarp ripped to shreds, so we just replaced it with that green like artificial fencing,
yeah.
that good sturdy green stuff. We replaced it with that, and now we're growing grapes on that. And so,
Cool. Yeah. No, that's cool. Like nothing. And when we first got here, we planted a bunch of berry bushes. So now we've got like a bunch of raspberries. Each year there'll be raspberries and currants and all these different fruits. And then we have like, our regular garden area, which is like beets and potatoes and tomatoes and squash and cucumbers and like, dude, that's cool being able to eat your own stuff. And if you grow it naturally, and could go into that whole thing, but yeah, that's great. Like you say, being able to get good healthy food from off of your own soil, and it just grows, and it'll be back there next year, and I'll be able to eat more of those great. I mean, that's so cool.
every year it just gets more. As long as you devote some energy and put some energy into them, they'll give it right back, man.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I'm really excited. Next year, dude, everything like remember, I just developed this property, right? So a lot of things have been like setting in,
Sure.
but dude, we got blackberries and we got the grapes, and we're gonna have the figs, and we're gonna have like artichokes coming out next. Like all of our artichokes survived this summer. Thank you, love.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Um, so next year, the point is that next year everything pops. You know what I mean? And so that's
No.
but it only works if you input your energy into it, right?
Yep.
You got to plant it. You got to buy the plant, grow the plant the plant, water the plant.
Yeah, and using natural means to grow it, right? Like don't use chemicals, because then your soil's not getting trained. But if you like, use your soil, or if like, you like have chickens and you can use that and you compost that over time, and then you can, because when we first started, we used we tilled the ground and softened it. We had to, long story. Now I'm getting into too long a story. I used a little skid steer loader, and I cut out in our backyard we had a hill that was sloping down, so I took a skid steer and I just took out two sections on the slope of the hill and made gardens there, and built a little retaining wall. And so the dirt that I got into was not good topsoil. So I the first several years I was tilling that and waiting for the soil to kind of get a topsoil type thing going on. And then now if you can just like have chickens and you compost that over time, and then you put that out, that you can do no-till and just build that soil up so that you've got the right microbes in the soil that are,
It takes years to do.
Yeah.
A good garden is not going to be. I mean, you can make it happen overnight. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But no. Like if you want to go all natural, God's way, by cultivating and regenerative farming, you know, then like it could take a few years. Like it could take years. Like I've been doing a choke out method. When I moved onto my property, it was goat heads and pricklies and just glass, broken glass, like a broken glass factory. And anyways, it's but over the last few years of like you said, tilling it and just growing plants,
Yep.
letting them fall, tilling, letting them fall, watering, growing. Eventually, yeah, it it becomes good, productive soil.
Oh,
And
yep.
and the more it grows, the more that ecosystem starts supporting itself, and eventually you have like little micro habitat.
Yes. Yes.
And we're starting to see some signs of it in our yard with like the wildlife that's coming in. That's always a good sign. And like, micro wildlife too,
Right.
like the types of bugs you see start
Right.
coming in, tell you where you're at. So no, man, worth every bit of sweat and every freaking blister, and every ripped fingernail from clawing at the ground. Dude, when those come back, there is no better investment than your home,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
your home and then your neighbors. I mean,
Yeah, and if we would all grow our own gardens, and then we would go support our local farmers, and if we would get that ground up thing going, dude. Government, get out of our way. Just don't go into this digital. Dude. We can do it, no problem, man. We just gotta not, go into that. And I know, eventually it will end up there. But the more we fight back on it, the better it will be. And
I tried last year to do I was gonna try to do this little campaign. And dude, I'm telling you, I called for states over. I called everybody I could think of for like states over. And I wanted to I wanted to call it Grow a Heart, okay? And I wanted to give out a bunch of artichokes, artichoke soil in a bucket, to kind of kick it off, and I was going to give out a bunch of artichokes and call it like Grow a Heart campaign, get people involved into growing their own food and stuff, and teach them about like niche climates and creating ecosystems in your yard and stuff. And but dude, I couldn't get none of these big names to work with me. I couldn't get any of these anybody. They were like, "Well, what kind of business are you looking at putting this in?" And I'm like, "I'm not. I'm trying to give these away." And they're like, "Well, we can't pay for that." And I'm like, "I'll pay for it." And they're like, that seems like a lot of plants. You sure you want to do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, we don't know if we want to." And I'm like, what the hell's wrong? Like, I have to like have some giant contract to
see that, yeah, that's
buy plants from you? Are you that freaking ridiculous and caught up in your red tape?
yep. Well, that's what we've been trained to do in school. See, that's kind of my point is we gotta like throw all that stuff off, shake all that stuff off, and just
Get
get back
back to reality.
to
Man,
reality. Exactly. Yep.
you know, it was hard, dude. That one hurt me. I'll be honest, like a little. Let me dump out my purse, right? But no, no, man, that one kind of hurt me because like I felt really motivated to this. Like I wanted to like I wanted to get involved with like these really big nurseries. Like I was trying to like pre-order everything. Like, look, I'll pay for like how many of them do you need to grow for this to be profitable for you? Like I'll buy that, and then I'll give them all out, right? And just like the red tape disassociation,
Yeah.
it was so mechanical and disconnected and robotic and like lacking reason, understanding, charity, grace, like understanding, empathy, any of these things, creativity, imagination, like none of it. They couldn't produce any of those qualities. And that, like, it kind of spooked me in a way about where the world was. I'm like, oh my goodness, if you can't even like get them involved in doing like a really good thing, and they don't even have to contribute, you know.
Right. No, I know, man. I feel you. Yep.
Yeah, but it kind of broke my heart in a way, man, and frustrated me in a lot of other ways, you know. So there it is. I'm
Yeah,
unpacking
no,
all.
I hear you. I feel you. Cool, OTG. Good job. Keep it up. I bet I could learn a thing or two from you.
So how's your night looking over there, man? You doing good on your end?
Yeah, I suppose I should wrap up here fairly soon. Uh, I got in-laws here and stuff, so you know how that goes, or maybe you don't know, but it goes.
Uh, yeah, if you got guests, you know, it's a hosting can be good work,
Indeed.
you know.
And how
Yeah,
about you?
here's a
What's
good
going on?
question.
What's
What state does OTG reside in?
Yeah, I noticed that too. I wonder if you'll give an honest answer here.
Yeah, you want to let us in? Come on, man. We're a team over here, right? Yay for the moment.
Yay.
Hey, cool. Man, I used to live in Lebanon. So I'm glad I don't live in Pennsylvania. I'm
Stuart.
sure it's wonderful for all sorts of people, but
Uh,
no,
Stuart's funny there.
it's not even a state. No, it's like a county ship. All right. Wow, man. Do you think you feel like you feel like you were able to get out what you wanted to get out? You know, were you able to bring full context to some of your statements? You think?
Well, yeah, yeah, a little, yeah, I definitely got some things out that I think were good. You know, I really wish that we would pay attention to this, what's coming down the track with this digital ID. I really think like they look at the amount of effort they put into 9/11 to like and everything since then. If you realize that all of that was a means to get to this end, it shows you how pivotal this is,
And coordinated.
and coordinated. And the reason that they're putting in so much effort is because we could just simply all say no, and they're game over. They can't make us. But it kind of does take us saying no is the key. And so it is what it is. And eventually we know that it will end up there, but like, the more we push back and fight it, the better off I think it will be. And like JP Cortez, I'll bring him up again, going around to
Yeah.
these states and making gold and silver, bringing it into their system, even though I think it's already lawful money, and for us to make it legal tender is kind of a numbskull thing. But anyway, I want to not
Yeah,
dive
it
too
seems redundant, doesn't it?
right. But even that it's happening is such a positive thing. It's bringing awareness to the states. It's creating a path that will lie outside of digital thing, like if we can have two different avenues, one for just a little bit of escape from that, talk about a huge difference. Like that makes a huge difference. If we get locked into it and there's no side roads, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, it's gonna be real. Whereas if you have a couple side roads, well, it sucks that you have to take the side road and it takes longer and it's more frustrating, but it's possible. That makes a big difference. So I think the more that we push back, fight back, create our own
Subsystems.
communities, help each other. Don't just let it be but the computer says. Say, no, you know what, you're my fellow human, and I'm going to help you because you're in need of something. And even though the computer says no, we can work around that. Like, the more we get back to reality and don't let this fake reality run our lives, the better off we're going to be, and the better off for our kids and blah, blah, blah. So
Agreed. All the blahs, bro.
cool.
No, these guys are drinking in chat.
He said he's
Looks like
drinking
about nightcaps. So, man, I appreciate you coming out.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, man, ending up in the pit. I think we got there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Next up, Flat Earth and Ghosts.
All right. Sounds fun.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I don't know if this crowd would go run that well. I think we'd be all right in here. I think we'd run all sorts of craziness.
We survive. Once you can tackle some of these main big things, the rest is just kind of fun and games. Like this, what we're touching on is paramount for everyone. And so some of the little side questions and games and problems are just little side problems and games in it, but this is a big one. And if you can't buy or sell unless you have a certain thing, that puts a lot of pressure on you and your family. And so the more side avenues that we have, the more better off it's going to be.
Yep. Diversity of investment, and that's one we can talk about more too, like different routes of investment, like we discussed earlier, music, art,
Yep.
Technology. These are capital investments.
Yeah.
And a lot of and wouldn't you know it, it's all the old technologies you would want to get your hands on,
Mechanical. I've been saying for the last 15 years, 10 years or something, mechanical cars are going to come back into style. Like, if you can fix it yourself and you don't have to have an electronic chip and it's mechanically like inclined to work, if you have a spark and it sparks and ignites the gas and pushes the piston, if you can get back to some of these like that will be key as well. So yeah.
What do we do right now? What do we do tomorrow? I don't think that's a good question. What do we do right now? Midnight's coming. Who's going to be up? I'll probably still be up.
Oh, for tonight's thing that's happening. Is that tonight really? It's supposed to be a thing that we're shutting down tonight? I haven't been close to the news really.
Oh, midnight, it's going. Like, dude, these people don't get along. This is going to take a long time to get through this one. It's going to be bad, this one. I mean, they're going
to milk it for all it's worth.
Oh my goodness. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
For sure.
And I don't know. I'll probably be up. I usually don't sleep till like real late anyways, and then I'm up all stupid freaking early, you know. And so I'll probably be sneaking around the house, but I'll be up maybe eating food. I like to eat at night.
Well, there's lots of things to be watching right now. Won't be for lack of something to
What's our current
with.
silver price? Oh, I wonder if I could find that.
I can tell you right here. It is 47.15, back over 47.
Yeah. It was
Man,
50
we were
a
we
minute
were at
ago.
47.50 just like a little bit ago.
Well, and
No,
that's funny. We were just talking that pullback, like if that was the pullback, and it
that
really
was the,
wasn't much of a pullback, was it?
right. Yeah, that was the pullback, and now it's over. That's funny.
Dude, it's cruising on the way to 100. Like, I don't know, 100 might be like a weary cap for a lot of people. I could see a lot of people cashing out at 100. But I mean, there is no cashing out with silver. It just trades hands.
That's it. You got to realize the bigger game at play and understand the reality of what's taking place, because it doesn't do you any good to jump out of silver at 100 into the thing that's made it go that high as this is falling. So like there's no need to get into this once it's up there. Like that would be the wrong move.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, if you're not, I have some bills to pay, and when I reach a certain place, I'm going to take a few of my coins and cash them in and pay
I
my.
did today.
But like there's no need to cash out of all of it. Like that's not thinking straight, in my opinion.
No, it's not. That is not hedging your investment. That is not how hedging works. You know.
Yeah.
4702 on Kitco.
Cool.
What about you checked bullion by post though, didn't
I
you?
checked bullion by post. If you go over to AppMex says 47.35. So
And that's going to be the majority of your pawn shops.
yeah. AppMex is what most people will go by, or Kitco. Some people use Kitco too, but most bullion shops will be more at the AppMex pricing.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like to watch bullion by post because you get to watch more the actual market closely. Like you get to see the spikes up and the spikes down more clearly, whereas and that gives you an insight into what's kind of happening in the market a little bit clearer, to whereas if you're just watching AppMex, it's just like a very slow rounded thing. So
yeah, and they do that to make it appear more stabilized in the charts. That way people don't geek and freak at every little twitch.
right, yeah,
They don't want them too twitchy. They want it to feel accurate and in the moment, but without like too much panic mode setting in when they see 50 orders go up in a moment.
Yeah.
They're not going to see those 50 orders get bought back.
Yeah.
They'll be busy cashing out, and they don't want them to cash out. And so yeah, AP Mex. Yeah, here, let me toss this up. It's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, and that's true because we tend to think of this as one giant monopolized market, and it's not. These are trade market groups. These are market groups, and these are all based on different. I mean, all of these guys are getting these big giant paper gold companies, are all getting gold at different prices anyways. And so in these big groups, then all these contracts are then leveraged differently depending on who you're working with. And so it's by the time it cycles down to AP Max, they're not true. No, they're not. They'll capitalize, they'll tweak them figures, that spread ratio, until they get the price they like. They just adjust the bid and ask. They just calibrate it based on the bid and ask, and then generate the spot based on that. and technically it's not a lie. They just generate their spot differently.
Yeah.
That's why most of these companies will declare their bid ask ratios somewhere in the program. They'll declare their bid ask, how they generate their spot. Usually that has to be declared, you know. Oh man, I need to let you go, huh? I need to shut this thing down.
Well, yeah, I don't have to, but yeah, I probably need to get going here. So,
Yeah, I just don't want to tie you up, man.
no, yeah, you're good. You're good. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, dude, this is I love these. These are what will keep me up all night talking till freaking midnight, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I could do that. I could do that with
No, well, and it's really like this, it's good to have this community where I can actually come and talk to you and like we can just go back and forth and not skip a beat. And whereas, you might, your average person off the street, you couldn't, you try to approach one subject and you might have a lot of trouble, whereas it's nice to be able to have people that are in the same realm as your understanding that you can bounce things off of. So,
right.
because otherwise, I mean, it's hard to live in this world where everyone is living in this false reality and they think that's reality. And so when you are kind of living in this other reality, it's like it can be frustrating to think maybe you're, does anyone else see what I see? But they're out there.
Well, and that's another thing too. Like we are human and we do tend to like self-mitigate what's reasonable based on what we see around us. And
Yeah.
so when it appears as if the majority feel a certain way, we tend to want to check ourselves in a way and be like, am I
Yeah.
being unreasonable?
Right.
You know?
Oh, you should, right? I mean, yeah, it's only smart.
Yeah, you want to self-victimize right away. Like, am I the one that's doing that? Right. But when you do come into these communities and all of a sudden, like you realize like when you get out of those stupid echo chambers and then you come in here and you realize there's still diversity of opinion on these matters, yet there's consensus in a lot of these things that normally you're hounded over.
Yep.
And and but what it does is it does lend credibility and validity to how you've been feeling anyways. A lot of us just don't know because we haven't been having these conversations because the majority's not even talking about it. And anything you say is going to sound like crazy people stuff to them.
Yep.
And then you come around here and you feel at home again. And so all of a sudden the mind starts going to work, and I think the spirit does a lot of work too in this,
For
you
sure.
know, that
Definitely does for me. It's what's allowed me to get on track at all. Because otherwise, how would I know anything is right or not? So yeah, for me, that's been huge. And I actually think that is the whole in society is that most and a lot of people do not rely on the spirit, and it's the spirit that gives life. That's what, for those people who have read the Bible and hear what Jesus said, God is spirit, and it's the spirit that gives life. And if we can focus in on life and reality, because that's what I want truth, I want reality. And you know
and truth is delivered by the spirit. In fact, the spirit delivers all truth.
and if God is, if these are inalienable rights from our creator, and the creator has created this and he's given us our God-given senses, and I was taught throughout my life to throw off my God-given senses. School tells you don't you're crazy to think about God-given senses, and when you're talking to yourself, you're just talking to yourself. There's no one else that can hear your thoughts. Well, when you allow for the spirit to be real and affect your life, then that's what allowed me to center myself on truth and reality, and let some of those things that my senses are telling me, you know, this is the way it is, but all of my peers and society says don't use your senses. But once you allow yourself to hone those senses that God has given you, and why would He give you those senses if they're not good enough to get you through His creation that He created? Like only common sense would tell you He's going to give you the right senses to be able to show you what you need to get through. And so for me, that's been the biggest help for me out of all of this, was because I got shaken because I seen some of these things coming, and the society wasn't seeing it, and they're still not. But once I allowed for those senses and those things that I felt like I was being shown to test them, right? You test them, you see what is and isn't true, and that allowed me to center myself on what for me is reality. And that's really the key. I think that if we would all our allow for our God-given senses to be used, and allow His Spirit to guide us where He wants us, well, many of the problems would go away.
Well, we're built to live in a sense of, righteousness and godliness and order. You know, we were built to work correctly. You know,
Yep.
we were built to work correctly, and so, when anytime you're in error, it's going to be difficult.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and that should be a red flag. Like, is
Yep.
this creating undue burden on your life? Then
Yep.
maybe it's not the right thing. you know.
Yep. Like the mask, like you brought up the mask a little bit ago. You know, quite clear to me that I didn't enjoy wearing that. If anything, it was making me sicker. That actually I didn't wear it, but like it would just be common sense that that's going to make you sicker. You can't. I don't know. I mean, it's just common sense. Your senses tell you that that's not right. You weren't created with a mask over your face. Like I use one for when I um machine wood, and I'm in my shop, and there's lots of dust and debris in the air, and I'm cutting on a table saw or whatever. Then I'll wear a mask. But as soon as the debris is out of the air, you take that off so that you can breathe, because that's where you breathe through, right? And so the fact that society was saying you're suddenly killing granny because you're not putting on a mask, shows you great delusion.
Don't
And
you gaslight me.
right. So yeah,
Yeah.
get back to trusting your own God-given senses. Get back to reality. There is a reality. That's the other thing that helped me, is there is a reality. And if you allow for reality to be reality, then you're able to manage your way through these things. And
Well, it's like you look at the precious metals real quick. Let's bring it back to reality again, or I shouldn't even say reality. It is reality. But let's bring it back to the monetary issue again. How can we make this practical again? I mean, we talk about this all the time, like the reality of precious metals, those boxes that we check that make it valuable to us. And when we discuss like crystal osmium with people, and we're talking to a gold guy, this can be a difficult conversation, and you think this would be a very simple
right.
subject and very easy to understand and adapt to, you know but at the end of the day, you know in my experience, one of the best ways to get it back to reality is going back to those basic check boxes, of reality. Like, look, man, you need to go back to your core and get out of the hype, get out of the politics, get
Yep.
out of the consumer warfare. and and just look at the basic core truth dynamics and principles of trade for just a second. There's only so much available. This keeps well. You know what I mean? It takes X amount of input to even get it out. It's used for these things. You know,
Yep.
here's your demand, here's your supply, go.
Yep. Yep.
There's
It's
no reason to
noble.
complicate.
Yep. It's noble beyond noble. Like it's the noble of the nobles. And yeah, you just go through those boxes and you're like, oh, okay, I see. Well, cool.
But boy, do we sure make it difficult. You know, by the time you've gotten into options trading and stuff, and look what's going on with that, like how those even run. I mean, it is so far from like one of the primary things that drove me to precious metals was the honesty of it, the
Yes.
honest,
Yes.
honorable, the integrity of the system.
Honest weights and measures, man. Dude, there's so much in that little statement.
It's the simplicity
Yeah.
of this, just the security through simplicity, the simplicity through the ethic, the whole thing was just seemed driven on an honorable and natural process.
Yep.
And every time you get away from that, you just start discovering problems, complexities, you know, and it just rips apart the whole it rips apart the whole dang thing.
Yep. Yep.
And every time you start stepping away from that and you're going into man systems, not natural systems, man systems.
Yep.
And that's where it gets difficult. This is where it's a problem, not right here. This is successful and a successful model. We know this because those 4 silver rounds you were holding in your hand earlier were $60, and here in a month and a half they're going to be $60 a piece.
Yep. Yep.
In the story.
Yep. Yep. I was holding. What's that?
Oh, Pete just dropped in. That's cool. Pete repeat.
Pete and repeat. All right, cool, bud. Well, I better let you go this time. So
yeah, no, it is time to shut that. We've been going a while, I imagine. I have no idea how long we've been going, but I've enjoyed it.
Yep. Yeah, we don't want to start repeating ourselves to Pete.
Sorry, Pete, man, you're all late in. Oh, look at this. 3 hours and 2 minutes. There it is. I found it.
Yep.
So,
yep.
But
back in Pete, yeah, I don't know.
Thank you for being so open and honest and ethical tonight. I really appreciate that. It lended a lot to the conversation.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Well, of course, man. And man, everybody in chat, guys, thank you. I appreciate all y'all being here, and you guys brought a lot to this too. I enjoyed the background conversations and jokes, and I appreciated all the comments too, guys. I mean, you guys are on it. I have no worry about y'all. I really, I mean, this system's not going to fool you guys. I got a lot of faith in you. So.
Yep, and yeah, if you guys don't mind, hit the thumbs up for Space Miner, and do all that stuff that you're supposed to. I think neither one of us tried to talk about it much on our channels because it's getting ridiculous out there, and I don't think we all need to say it. But you do just kind of mentally forget, and so when I'm on somebody else's platform, I like to remind people, hit that like button for them and subscribe if you haven't, and all that stuff. So,
and guys, go visit the B over at Long Live. Make sure you're subbed up, and go watch some of his programs. He's been hitting some really good, solid topics lately that are I think they're gonna come into more of our conversation soon. So, oh, dude, we didn't even get to your purchase.
Right. Well, there's more.
That one's yours. So.
We'll discuss it next time.
So. All right, guys, thank you. I appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate y'all, and see you soon. Hope you have fun.
Yep. All right. Thanks, chat. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Space
Bye.
Mighty.